Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Eye of the Horse. "Oh my God!" shrieked the women, sitting in the airport van, third and fourth row bench seats, as the frigid air rushed in. "No!" I yelled, now alone and motionless in the second row. I never saw a guy die before, but I wasn't totally surprised by what happened. "The door just opened and out he went," sobbed one of the gals in the rear of the van. His body slammed onto the pavement of Pena Boulevard at 70 Mamie, then was splattered by the U.S. Foods 18-wheeler behind us. Steak delivery to Elway's Tap Room and Grill at Denver International Airport was definitely delayed that day. I wish I had never started a conversation with the guy next to me on American Flight 5460 Louisville to Denver. Or maybe I should have warned him to just close his eyes. That day won't stop playing back in my mind. It started innocently enough. "Hi, I'm Jim from Meeker. Where are you from?" I said to the guy in the window seat. "My wife Annie says that if I get the middle seat, I should always make friends with my neighbors to avoid any armrest fights." I flashed him my biggest gas and oil business smile. "Oh, hello. I'm Brian from Kentucky. Well, at least originally," he replied while extending his oddly sweaty hand. "Where's Meeker?" "Actually, I live on a horse ranch just west of Meeker in northwestern Colorado. Horse country, just like you in Kentucky." I pulled up the bottom of my boot-top business jeans so he could see my Tony Llamas. "Oh, hell no. I don't live anywhere near horses now, and never will. I'm a lawyer for the U.S. Department of the Interior." Brian's upper lip was sprouting beads of sweat with that comment. He looked like a size 48 man in a size 44 suit coat. I thought that might explain the perspiration. "That's too bad," I said. "God never made another animal so connected to human beings, except for maybe dogs. My stallion's big brown eyes can look straight into my soul." After a rough day of selling natural gas and fracking pumps, there's nothing like some quality horse time. "Mind if I ask what happened between you and a horse?" "Oh yeah. You could say something happened. I was 15 years old, and a bunch of us decided to cut across a horse field to take a shortcut home from the school bus drop off. Out of nowhere, this huge old gray horse charged at us and damn near bit me as we escaped over the fence. It had one scarred eye socket, and the other eye was all red and bulging and bloodshot. Scared the shit out of me. I fell off the fence and broke my right wrist. I cursed that horse, and I think he cursed me. Look, it never did heal right. Brian pulled up his sleeve, held up his meaty right arm, and revealed a wrist that was weirdly bent like a spoon. Yeah, I can see how that would spook you. How did the horse lose its eye? How the hell am I supposed to know? I was just a kid, and I sure didn't have anything to do with it. From that day on, old One Red Eye charged up to the fence and acted like it wanted a piece of me anytime it saw us walking along the road by his pasture. Hey, have you seen a stewardess yet? I really need a drink. Now Brian's hands were trembling a little. Our jet pivoted onto the runway. All eyes looked forward. Engine jets roared, and we accelerated with 3 Gs pulling us backwards into the seats. Then the wheels were up, and we were airborne. Hey, darling, could you please get my friend here an old-fashioned? And could you please put it on my credit card? Flight 5462 stewardesses looked like they were recruited from the geriatric ward, older and slower than the spry, shapely young ones from the good old days of air travel. After a few gulps, Brian's hands stopped shaking, but his mouth kept on running. That's not all, Jim. I biked across country when I was 25 years old and almost got trampled to death by wild horses. My buddy and I were in Warm Springs, Nevada, the middle of nowhere in Nye County, with the largest wild horse herd in America. Warm Springs had a one-building combined bar/restaurant/gas station/grocery store. We were exhausted after biking the 50 miles from Tonopah in 100-degree heat, and asked the barkeep if it was okay to pitch our tent for the night near the picnic table beside his establishment. He said, "I don't give a shit." So we did. We conked out right away, and hours later woke up to the sound of thunder. Then the noise became deafening, and the ground and tent walls really shook. I peeked out between the tent flaps and saw nothing but the hooves, shanks, and fetlocks of hundreds of wild horses. It wasn't an earthquake. We were in the middle of a fucking wild horse stampede. Brian's eyes were now bugging out, and his face was red, wet, and kind of wild looking as he continued. He leaned in toward me and spoke in a whisper. "Jim, I curled up in the goddamn fetal position, preparing to be killed by horses. I don't mind telling you that I actually pissed myself." The guy in the aisle seat, who I never did get to make friends with, heard what Brian said, shifted away from us, and put on his headphones. I guess he had overheard enough. I wish I had done the same. Brian gulped down a second old-fashioned and collected himself a bit. "Jim, when the noise stopped and the dust started to clear, we crawled out from our tent, expecting to find our bikes, and our gear flattened and mangled. But Jim, not a single tent stake or guy rope was disturbed, and our stuff was untouched. There was no way I could sleep after that shit. And we had 75 miles of desert road with no water between Diablo and Ash Springs. So, my buddy insisted that we pack up and pedal before the sun came up. I wasn't too thrilled about him pushing the whole ride in the dark idea. Just as we made it to Diablo, I heard a sound like horses snorting off to our right. And Jim, I swear, I saw one of those wild horses staring right at me with two glowing red eyes. My buddy said I was seeing things, but I know what I saw. Right then, my bike freewheel jammed and sent me flying over the handlebars. I didn't break anything, but I whacked my shoulder and scraped the shit out of my leg. That was it for me. He rubbed his left shoulder like it happened yesterday. The armpits of his polyester suit coat were soaked. I wish I had told Brian that I needed to get some sleep before we landed in Denver, but I didn't. He might be alive today if I had ended our conversation right then and there. Jim, don't you know the only building in Diablo, Nevada, was a road maintenance garage? The night shift worker there refused to lend us the use of their tools. Sorry, state property boys. So I stayed there till the sun rose and hitched a ride to Las Vegas and flew home. Instead of a relaxing flight home, I got the scare of my life. Brian took another swig from his drink. Jim, I sat next to this Navajo Indian dude on the plane ride home and told him my story, just like I'm talking to you. He was tall, wore a fancy black suit, and had his hair all pulled back and tied by a white cloth, but smelled like he just came from a campfire. He never said a word until he slowly turned toward me and said, "My people believe the sun-bearer created the horse and placed the stars and the dark universe in the horse's eyes so they can see the dark. You know darkness can kill a man. So can the number 3. Then he got up out of his seat and went to bathroom and never came back." With that, Brian's face turned pale. I thought he was finally done with his weird story, but he leaned into me again and whispered, "Jim, I think he figured the horses see something dark in me, and I am afraid I'll die if a red-eyed horse looks into my eyes a third time. So, no 3 strikes and you're out for me. No fucking thank you. I don't want to see another horse in my life. My sister just moved to downtown Denver, and I just want to visit her and maybe see a Nuggets basketball game. Yeah, I think some big city shopping and a pro basketball game would do you good, Brian," I said. But now he's dead. I told my wife Annie all of this when I got home. Honey, I was afraid to tell him about that 32-foot-high blue Mustang sculpture. You know, the one just outside the airport that has, of all things, 2 glowing red eyes. I was sure he would go into a full PTSD episode or a seizure if he knew that we call the statue Lucifer. Remember how a section of that 9,000-pound statue fell on that Jimenez guy who sculpted him, and how it crushed his leg and severed a big artery and caused him to bleed to death. I figured he didn't know the story of the crazy guy who hopped out of his car and fired his gun at Lucifer, then turned it on himself. Annie, after we landed, I rode in the same airport van on the same front bench seat as Brian, specifically to distract him as we passed by Lucifer. "You did everything you could to help that poor man, Jimmy," she said, trying to console me while she slipped into her nightgown. "Seems like it's the van company's fault for that sliding door not locking right, sweetie. At first, I didn't think Brian ever actually saw Lucifer's red eyes. But just after we passed that bastard blue Mustang, he looked at the driver's rear-view mirror and saw Lucifer all reared up on his hind legs with those red eyes beaming. Brian looked at me, and before I could say anything, he just opened the van's side door, and out he went. I should have warned him about the statue. I could have saved him. Annie said, "Oh my God, sounds like that guy had deep issues, and nobody can save that kind of crazy. Why don't you go down to the barn and check on your horses? They always calm you down." I couldn't tell her that I thought about horses and red eyes when I saw car taillights on the road ahead of me as I drove home that night. I couldn't tell her that I was worried about looking into my horse's eyes or what they would see in me. I couldn't tell her that on my last business trip, I had sat next to a Navajo Indian. He wore a black silk business suit, white button-down shirt with turquoise cufflinks, and a thin black leather necktie. His long black hair was pulled back in a traditional CL hair bun, and he smelled of burnt sage. He only spoke one sentence to me, and then got up to go to the bathroom and never returned. I hadn't even introduced myself yet. He simply turned to me and calmly asked, "Aren't you worried those natural gas and fracking pumps are harming Mother Earth?" The call scene. A rainy evening. Thunder rumbles in the distance as rain taps steadily against the window of a modest apartment. The dim lighting casts long, restless shadows across the room. The faint flicker of a nearby street lamp seeps through the blinds, adding a melancholic glow to the space. A landline phone rings, sharp and intrusive, cutting through the ambient rain pattern. Sitting on her worn couch with a half-read book resting on her lap, Claire stiffens. She glances at the phone, her heart thumping at the unexpected sound, as if it doesn't fit into her tranquil evening. After a moment's hesitation, she picks it up. "Claire, hello?" The line crackles faintly, followed by a pause so long it feels static. Then, a calm and deliberate voice speaks. "Stranger, is this 555-3248? Claire." "Yes, who is this?" The voice carries a weight that makes her sit up straighter. "Stranger, you don't know me, but I must talk to you." Claire frowns, her grip on the receiver tightening. Her free hand instinctively brushes the edge of her book, the texture grounding her in an unreal moment. Her eyes dart to the rain-speckled window, searching for a reason and context to anchor the odd exchange. "Claire, I think you have the wrong number, stranger." "No, Claire, I don't." Her name hits her like a sharp slap, causing her breath to catch. The stranger's calm, steady tone unnerves her. A chill creeps up her spine as she glances around the small apartment. The corners of the room seem darker now, with the shadows stretching like tendrils toward her. "Claire, pause. How do you know my name, stranger?" "That's not important. What matters is that you listen to me. You're not safe." Her mind races. 1,000 explanations surge forward, each more implausible than the last. Her voice wavers, though she forces an edge of firmness into her tone. "Claire," sharply. "Excuse me?" Her grip on the receiver tightens, and her knuckles whiten. An involuntary tremor beneath her surface betrays the facade of control she's trying to project. "Stranger, please, just listen. There's no time to explain everything. You need to leave your apartment now. Don't pack a bag. Don't waste a second. Just go." Claire blinks, her mind catching onto the sheer absurdity of the command. She lets out a nervous laugh, though it sounds hollow even to her ears. "Claire, okay, seriously, who put you up to this? Was it Nina? She's always pulling this kind of..." "Stranger, this isn't a joke, Claire." The voice pierces her deflection with a sharp edge. Thunder crashes outside, shaking the windows and masking the sound of her sharp inhale. Claire stands instinctively, the book falling from her lap. Her bare feet press against the cold hardwood floor, grounding her again in the surreal moment. "Claire," voice rising, "I don't know who you are, but..." Stranger, interrupting, "Look out your window." Her heartbeat quickens. She hesitates, clutching the receiver as though it's the only thing tethering her to reality. Slowly, she moves to the window, her hand shaking as she pulls back the blinds. The street below is drenched in the rain, but her eyes immediately land on a figure standing across the street, motionless under the flickering light of a street lamp. Their face is obscured by a hood, their silhouette unnervingly still. Claire's breath catches as the figure tilts its head, as though she is aware she is watching. "Stranger, now, do you believe me?" Claire stumbles back from the window, her heart pounding. The receiver trembles in her hand. Her voice is a hoarse whisper. "Claire, who is that, stranger?" "Someone who shouldn't be there. Leave. Now." Claire glances toward the door of her apartment, her mind spinning with questions. The shadows in the room seem to deepen, pressing in around her. She feels the weight of the stranger's words. The urgency is unmistakable. Her instincts scream at her to move, but fear roots her in place. The voice cuts through her attempt at humor, sudden and sharp, freezing her mid-sentence. Stranger. I wouldn't call if it weren't serious. Claire. Snapping. I don't even know who you are. Why would I trust anything you're saying? Stranger. I've been watching and know about the black car parked across the street. Claire's emotions become numb. Earlier, she had barely noticed the car, attributing it to a neighbor's visitor or someone sheltering from the rain. Now, the memory of its presence sharpens, and her hands shake as she edges toward the window. Her voice drops to a whisper. Claire, how do you... Stranger. It's been there for hours, hasn't it? 2 men inside. They're waiting for something or someone. The stranger's words weigh her down, causing her to hesitate. Slowly, she reaches for the curtain, pulling it back just enough to see. Her heart hammers as her gaze locks onto the sleek black car parked beneath the flickering street lamp. The rain cascades off its hood, dark windows like mirrors, revealing nothing of what lies inside. Her breath catches in her throat, her voice trembling as she forces the question out. Claire, voice trembling. Who are they, stranger? Not friends. That's all you need to know. Her stomach twists. Her mind races, trying to make sense of the situation. She looks back at the car as though staring long enough will unlock some clue to their presence. The thought of being watched targets claws at her sanity. Claire, hoarse whisper. Why would they be watching me, stranger? You have something they want. Or maybe someone you know does. It doesn't matter. People perceive you as a solitary figure. Her vision blurs with rising panic. She steps back from the window, her hand gripping the curtain, as though it's the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes dart around the apartment, scanning the familiar clutter. Her jacket slung over a chair, an unopened stack of mail on the kitchen counter, and the half-empty glass of wine on the table, as if the answer might be hiding there. But nothing makes sense. Claire, frantic. I don't understand. I'm just an office manager. I don't... Stranger, interrupting, firm. Claire, focus. You're wasting time. Leave now. Take the fire escape. Don't use the front door. Her head spins. The idea of fleeing overwhelms her senses. Rain drums against the window, matching the frantic beat of her heart. She stumbles toward the couch, snatching up her phone and keys, her voice rising in a desperate plea. Claire, shaking her head. And go where, stranger? Anywhere but there. Head toward the train station. Don't stop until you're in a crowded place. She freezes, gripping the phone tightly, her knuckles white. Her voice drops to a whisper, tears threatening to spill. Claire, choking. I don't know if I can trust you. The line goes silent for a beat, but when the voice returns, it's colder, steelier, a warning, laced with urgency. Stranger, you don't have to trust me, but if you stay, they will come inside, and they won't knock. The words struck her deeply. A fresh wave of fear courses through her as a sound cuts through the rain. A distant car door shutting. Claire's breath hitches. She turns back to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to see a shadowy figure step out of the black car. Another figure follows, their movements deliberate and synchronized. One figure adjusts their coat, and for a fleeting moment, she notices the gleam of something metallic at their side. Stranger, urgently, Claire, go now. Her breath tightens in her throat. The phone slips from her hand, clattering onto the table as adrenaline takes over. She bolts for the window, leading to the fire escape, fumbling with the latch. The rain hisses against the glass, and the faint hum of voices from the street grows louder. She freezes as a sharp knock echoes from the front door. It's noisy, firm, and final. The sound reverberates through the apartment like a countdown. Stranger, from the fallen receiver, faint. Don't look back, just run. The rain outside grows heavier, drumming against the window, as if urging her to act. Claire stands paralyzed, her feet rooted to the floor, and her mind caught between disbelief and the suffocating weight of fear. Claire, growing frantic, picking up the phone. Wait, I need more than this. I need answers. Who are you? How do you know all of this? There's a long pause on the other end. The silence is so profound that she can hear her shaky breaths. When the voice returns, it's softer, almost regretful. Stranger, someone who owes you a debt. A big one. Claire, confused. A debt? I don't even know you. Stranger, you don't remember, but you saved my life once, and now I'm saving yours. Her thoughts whirl, memories colliding in her mind like shattered glass. Fragments of the past flash before her. Small acts of kindness, fleeting interactions with strangers. But then, one moment stands out. Years ago, she pulled an injured man out of a wrecked car on a rainy night like this one. The metallic tang of blood, the desperate sound of his gasps, and her trembling hands pressed against his wound until paramedics arrived. His face, pale and bleeding, swims into focus in her mind. Claire, voice shaking. Is this about that car accident? Were you? Stranger, firmly. There's no time for questions. Go now, Claire. I'll call you again when it's safe. The phone clicks, the line going dead. The finality of the sound lingers in her ears. Claire stands frozen, the receiver still pressed to her ear, her knuckles white. She flinches as a crack of thunder rattles the windows. Slowly, she lowers the phone, her eyes drifting back to the window. The black car remains motionless, but now a faint glow of a cigarette flares inside. Her chest tightens as she stares at the tiny ember, an ominous beacon in the darkness. Claire, to herself, whispering, "What the hell is going on?" Suddenly, a faint creak from the hallway shatters the silence. Her heart leaps into her throat, her breath catching. She spins toward the sound, her eyes wide and searching. The noise could be anything. The old building settling, a neighbor, but now it feels like a warning. The hairs on her arms rise, and instinct takes over. She grabs her jacket and keys from the couch, her movements hurried and clumsy. Without a second thought, she moves to the window. The rain lashes at the glass, its icy touch shocking her as she forces the stubborn frame open. The fire escape looms outside, a slick, glistening path into the storm. Climbing through, the cold rain instantly soaks her, plastering her hair to her face. The metal beneath her feet is treacherous, every step a gamble. She grips the railing tightly, her knuckles aching as she descends. Below her, the black car suddenly roars to life. The headlights snap on, slicing through the downpour. She catches her breath. A door slams, and a tall, shadowy figure steps out. Their movements are purposeful and unhurried. Claire doesn't wait to see more. She runs, her feet slipping on the slick fire escape as she reaches the ground. The rain blurs her vision, each drop like a needle against her skin. Her breath is ragged, her pulse pounding in her ears. Behind her, the unmistakable sound of footsteps splashing in the water. Pools echoes through the narrow alley. The sound is steady and deliberate. A voice, not the stranger's, pierces the storm with a low, menacing call. Voice: "Claire, stop. You can't run forever." The words twist in her mind, each syllable heavy with malice. She doesn't look back. Every instinct screams at her to keep moving. She darts into an alley, her feet slipping on the wet concrete. The flickering street lamps overhead cast eerie shadows that seemed to chase her. Although the train station isn't far away, every step feels like a lifetime. Her muscles burn, her lungs ache, but she pushes forward, the stranger's voice echoing in her mind. Stranger's voice in her mind. You're not safe. As the rain intensifies, so does her determination. Each crack of thunder feels like a countdown. Each shadow is a threat. She is confident that she cannot stop. Whatever this is, whatever danger is hunting her, standing still means death. And Claire isn't ready to die, and the cabin in the cave. The sun began to fade behind the gray, overcast plateau that Ethan was hunting on, and darkness began to take over the lonely Mesa de Blanco wilderness once more. It wasn't long ago when the already threatening sky had turned an angry, boiling black color, and it had begun to rain down hectic sheets of bitter snowflakes and tiny shards of stinging ice. He squinted furiously around him, looking for any sign of the animal he was currently hunting. He had found some spore of the massive beast a little way back, and was a little surprised when he found out that the trail seemed to lead directly to the snow line of Mount Blanco, and then seemed to wind about the trees in the sparse forested areas. He knew its lair had to be nearby. Most people would have called the wilderness around the White Mesa beautiful, or serene, or perhaps breathtaking. But right now, in this bitter cold, he thought that maybe stark, bone-chilling, or bleak would better describe it. Ethan had seen this particular plot of God's good earth many times before, had wandered its trails, climbed its cliffs, waded its streams, and stalked its woods. It was referred to affectionately by most of the people in Ethan's profession as Greenhorn's Grave. It had been many years since he had been in this part of the Southwest, and for good reason. The game was sparse, and the land was inhospitable. The local townsfolk of Mesa Pueblo had sought out Ethan the last time he was at the local trading post selling his furs, and had told him of how, for the last 3.5 weeks, they have been tormented by a gigantic ghost cat, and that if there is anything he should not do, it would be to go out at night. Apparently, not soon after the last full moon, the livestock around the sleepy village of Mesa Pueblo started going missing. Large livestock. There were holes ripped through fences, and large tufts of white fur caught sticking to barbed wire, but no bodies were left behind. People started seeing the phantom cat ghosting about outside of town, and swore that it had glittering pink eyes. It loved killing livestock, but within a week, it had started targeting children. Any poor child wandering too far away was very liable to be snatched up, especially during night hours. There was very little blood. Apparently, the giant wildcat was taking all of this food back to its lair to eat the majority of it, and leaving nothing behind. It was the largest animal any of the people had ever seen, even larger than a grizzly in size, but only short glimpses had ever been seen of it so far. There was no noise made when it attacked, not even from its victims. The majority of the people of Mesa Pueblo were elderly and children, with scarcely a man between 15 to 50. They said they would like to buy Ethan's services and have him hunt down the giant ghost cat. The prospect of hunting this dangerous and legendary game, albeit in the unforgiving Mesa de Blanco region, intrigued Ethan. And to think of what price the pelt would sell for when the deed was done. It seemed like a profitable situation, but only a fool jumps headlong into the dark. So he quickly went about gathering more information about this incredible beast. Most people were too scared to say anything useful. But a boy on a ranch on the eastern outskirts of town said he saw it and could even draw how big it was. Ethan watched in stunned silence as the boy pulled out a piece of charcoal and started making long, hard lines along the wall of one of the outer barns. When the boy was done drawing, he wiped his brow and stepped back to admire his work. On the peeling barn wall was the outline of an enormous cougar, and the height of its shoulder went above Ethan's head. The kid wasn't a bad artist, Ethan had to admit, but the thing was way too big. Really, kid? You must be joking. That's bigger than a bear. The kid emphatically shook his head in the negative, then threw his hand toward the wall to emphasize his work. Grande fantasma gatto, espiritu gatto, the boy exclaimed. But when Ethan shook his head, the boy sighed dramatically in exasperation, and then grabbed the cuff of his jacket and led him to the other side of the barn. There is where he saw the paw print the enormous cougar had left behind in the mud. Ethan's foot easily fit in it. Ethan was no small man. When Ethan returned to trading post, a few eager locals looked up hopefully, wondering if he would take the job. "I'm going to need an advance," stated Ethan. He was going to use some of the advance to upgrade his old equipment. Ethan's current arms didn't have enough power to do the job, and they also had distinctive quirks that made firing them extremely dangerous in life or death situations. If he was going to do the job, he was going to do it right. A few minutes later, after meeting with the elder chief and obtaining the advance, Ethan was at the local gun shop. Old Bessie was an aging scattergun, well beyond her years of useful service. She was traded for the largest caliber rifle they had, a Winchester Model 1886, chambered to fire a .50 caliber Buffalo killing round. It held 9 rounds in a rotating clip, and he was sure it would be able to put out the firepower he would need to put it down. If not with one shot, maybe 2. The gun shop owner wouldn't even hardly look at the worn Colt Patterson he was carrying. Cap and ball were frowned upon these days. So he decided to keep the old .36 caliber as another backup. When Ethan started haggling over the price of the Colt 45 Single Action Army 45 SAA, the shopkeeper just put her hands meaningfully around his hands, which were still holding the gun, and said, "Tu mantienes," Ethan grunted in response. "Fine, but I'm just borrowing it. Do you have bullets? Oh, and gunpowder." An hour or so later, and Ethan had found lodgings at a homestead around the west side of town. in the area where most of the sightings happened, and at a place which had been devastated by the ghost cat. Grandma Theodora Eckets ran a pretty decent operation, breeding horses. Her business had recently come crashing down when Phantasmagato had started hauling off her male studding stallions in the middle of the night. Now she only had a couple of foals and a mare or two to her name. Her work hands and her daughter wouldn't leave her, however. They said they never would, no matter how bad it got. The ranch was their life. Grandma Eckets wasn't complaining. In fact, she was in a cheery mood since she found out Ethan was going to be staying with them because she had another person to cook for. She at once proclaimed Ethan too skinny and went about filling his plate with all sorts of tender meats, all seasoned perfectly and cooked to perfection. Ethan had excused himself after dinner and went out back to sight in his weapons. He placed several cans and bottles on various posts around the main barn area, and then cut a circle in the side of the barn itself to serve as some basic targets. The trapper smiled to himself as he began to twirl the .45 Colt SAA around his right index finger. Then he twirled it a little faster. Then he switched hands and continued to twirl with his left, all in one fluid motion. Then suddenly, the gun ceased moving and the barrel aimed directly at the nearest bottle. Ethan fired from the hip, and the bullet cored into the fence post below the target bottle. He fired again, and it went wide. On the third shot, the bottle exploded. Ethan finished with a last twirl and replaced the SAA in its shiny new hip holster, all in one smooth movement. Clapping could be heard from behind him, and then a low whistle. Ethan turned to see Grandma Eckets' beautiful daughter, Christina, standing there, hands on her hips, half smile on her lips. Standing next to her was Jose, the ranch's youngest occupant, and he was holding onto the top of his cowboy hat with one hand and had an astonished look on his face. Jose's mouth hung open, revealing crooked teeth. "Nice shootin' there, stranger. That bottle didn't know what was coming. And what fancy gunplay," said Christina. "He is like some gunslinger straight from the Wild West." "How did you do that, mister?" wondered Jose aloud. Ethan shrugged. "I have a lot of time on my hands, and not a terrible lot of things to fill it with. This calms my nerves." "Let's see it again, mister. Shoot something else." Ethan nodded, then turned back to the targets, standing stock still. He stood there for a good 10 seconds, lasting until the tension could be snapped with a knife. Ethan pulled out the age 36 Colt revolver quicker than it takes a bolt of lightning to hit the ground, right-handed, and fired 3 times in a row. 2 cans and a bottle met their untimely demise. "Amazing!" cried Jose, visibly awed. "Well now, with shootin' like that, we sure don't have nothing to worry about as far as that white cougar that's been prowling around, eating our people and cattle. Where'd you learn to do that? Wondered Christina, quite astonished at the impressive display of marksmanship. My father, some. I taught most of it to myself. Really like a gunslinger, said a woozy Jose, the excitement getting to him a little and making him stumble. I got a sight in the rifle now, said Ethan, pulling the Winchester 1886 out of the holster on his back. He worried over it a bit before kneeling down and aiming at the round circle he cut into the barn. It wasn't long at all before he fired. 3 times. The sound was deafening. Holy cow, mister. I never heard nothing so loud in my life. Ethan offered the gun to Jose. Want to try? I'm warning you, though. It kicks like an ornery mule. Jose shook his head emphatically. No. To witness such perfection was enough. Ethan walked over to the barn and examined his shots. They were closely grouped, lower down, and slightly to the left of center in the circle. It was almost full dark before Ethan was satisfied enough with his arms to go inside and turn in. Now he was out here on the snowy and desolate Mesa de Blanco Plateau, with only his guns for company. And he was stalking an enormous albino cougar through the unforgiving wilderness. And Ethan's prey was a proven man-eater. If it spotted Ethan first, he was sure that he wouldn't even hear the damn thing at all before it had its fang-ridden mouth around his neck. The struggle would be brief. Then it would most likely haul Ethan's bloody corpse back to its lair to munch on at its own leisure. Grim thought that. Still, he was sure he could put the monster down with a good shot or two from the .50 caliber Winchester rifle. It really all came down to who saw the other first. But Ethan was also beginning to worry about the weather. It was starting to snow even harder, and the wind was picking up. With full dark right around the corner, getting caught out in a storm like this could be quickly fatal. He trudged through the icy, blinding snow, eager to find some kind of shelter, or, at worst, a large snowbank he could dig his way into and spend the night. Ethan quickly came up against an impassable, nearly vertical cliff wall, and he skirted along it arbitrarily to the left, keeping the cliff within arm's length to his right. Ethan stoically made it about another half-mile before finding the going almost impossible and the visibility worse than nil. The cold was making his limbs and face very numb, and it was getting harder to move with every strenuous, aching step. Then, like a shining beacon of blessed hope, Ethan managed to catch a glimpse of what appeared to be some kind of torchlight, and it couldn't be farther than 20 feet away. Even in this hellish storm, he was sure he could make it. Ethan stumbled into a cave not a moment too soon, his strength about to completely give out. A cozy series of somber lanterns were lit along the left cave wall, hanging from studs nailed into support posts or sitting ensconced in cleverly made recesses notched into the rock wall. The cave was unusually warm and inviting, at least when compared to outside. It seemed to have been mostly man-made and was almost smooth. Such was the care that had been made when the tough, mineral-streaked rock had been picked at and blasted thoroughly by dynamite, by at least several men for a very, very long time. Not far in, maybe about 50 yards from the cave entrance, and relieved to be out of the storm, Ethan came upon a quaint mining shack. Its wooden planks built right into the side of the shaft itself. The door to the shack was wide open and was hanging at a severe angle, nearly off its hinges. Ethan also noticed there were some scratches on the wall near the door jamb, but his brain was becoming foggy, and it didn't completely register. He was just so awfully cold and tired. There had to be some kind of boa or chair in that old shack that he could sleep on just for a little while until the storm passed and daybreak came. The weary trapper stumbled into the cabin and ineffectually tried to close the broken door behind him. He soon gave up and looked around the room in slumped lethargy. It was dim in here, only one low-lit lantern on a makeshift wooden table in the center of the room. There was only one other piece of furniture, which was a tattered cot in the corner of the room. But at least it seemed to be roomy enough to sleep two normal-sized men comfortably. Ethan put the rifle down in a clumsy motion on the center table, then lurched over to the bed in order to lie down. He had barely gotten his boots off and leaned his head back on the straw-filled pillowcase before he drifted off into a deep, seemingly endless sleep in which no dreams came. The last thing Ethan noticed before entering the warm sea of immeasurable darkness was that the bed smelled alarmingly like cat urine. Ethan awoke to find a half-ton of murderous, purring feline on top of his chest, apparently not shy to use Ethan as a bed warmer, sleeping the night away peacefully on what felt like a very full stomach. I should have known better, Ethan thought bitterly, as he eyed the massive canines poking awkwardly out of a foul-smelling cat jaw, not inches from his face. He could see tiny bits of meat still stuck in its oversized fangs. It didn't look like it could close its monstrous overbite. And right now, the thing was sawing logs away in a loud and sonorous, purring rumble that vibrated Ethan's chest. Its eyes were closed. Maybe. His arms were pinned to his side, and he knew he wouldn't be able to reach the SAA with either hand because the holster was in the wrong place to grab it under the mass of white fur and teeth that nearly smothered him. The rifle was a no-go. Not until he got this cat off him. The .36 Patterson, however, Ethan drew the .36 in one smooth, slow motion of his right hand, barely even rustling the beast cougar's shaggy fur coat before thrusting the barrel into the cat's side and firing off 3 shots as fast as he could. The effect was instantaneous, loud, and very bloody. The cougar leapt to its feet and staggered off the bed before jumping back in shock. It knocked over the table and sent the rifle and lantern crashing to the floor, shattering it and leaving a burning puddle of kerosene. The enormous ghost cat faced Ethan with its bulbous, pink, glittering eyes, staring hatefully at him through the haze of gun smoke from the .36. It kept its wounded side carefully toward the rocky cave wall. Ethan wiped warm cougar blood off his bearded face. This was going to get ugly. It was somewhat dim in the cabin, the only light coming in through the broken door and the tiny lake of fire burning in the center of the room. And the shadows abounded, merged and commingled in a dizzying fashion. Ethan pulled the .45 single-action army from its holster and aimed it directly at the snarling beast's skull with deadly precision and a steady arm. "Good night, Espiritu Gato," said Ethan under his breath as he pulled the trigger. Thunder boomed. Later that morning, a bedraggled, snow-studded Ethan stumbled back into town. The townsfolk gasped when they saw how his leathers were slashed deeply by what looked like a monstrous beast's paw. On the trapper's broad shoulders was the pelt of a giant, white, now docile cougar that would forever be remembered in Mesa Pueblo as Espiritu Gato, the midnight ghost cat that was slain by the lone trapper Ethan in mortal combat, finally bringing peace to a beleaguered town. Forever Christmas. "Roscoe, get off. Get off me. Get off, you crazy pup." My mangy mutt wakens me with a slobbery good morning before getting in a round of zoomies. I love him, but I'd also like to murder him. Before I do, though, I should really brush his teeth, I think, as I wipe off the sticky goop on my cheek. "Hey, hun, are you awake?" Lorraine, my wife, pops her head in the door, a festive robe tied around her. "Wait, it's Christmas," covered in dog slobber. "You forget to shut the door?" I chuckle. "Oops." She smiles back, the same one I fell in love with 11 years ago. I'd been a bit cynical about the whole true love thing in my youth. And then Lorraine bashed down all resistance with one glance. "Can you watch the kids for a sec? They're already going crazy, waiting to open presents," she says. "They're not the only ones," I reply. Then, lowering my voice so as not to ruin the magic that is an old man slithering his way down your chimney, "I can't wait to see the look on Nick's face when he unwraps the falcon." Lorraine slides over to me and kisses me. "Merry Christmas, baby." she whispers in my ear. It brings an overwhelming sense of comfort, but somewhere in me, I feel an unusual pang of despair. She slaps my butt and tells me to get up. The feeling retreats as I roll out of bed and throw on some loungers, excited to rile up Nick and Lily. I stomp my way downstairs. Ho! 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 Merry Christmas, I say, giving my best Kris Kringle impression. Daddy! They both scream out, their mother's smile plastered across their face. Look under the tree, shouts Nick. Daddy, Santa ate all our cookies, counters Lily. We'd spent yesterday designing and baking gingerbread cookies for Santa. It is Lily's favorite. Since she was 3, we'd all designed a dozen gingerbread cookies, 5 of which were subsequently judged to be the plate cookies by Lily. She would walk confidently around each tray, carefully inspecting each cookie, letting out a scientific every now and then, before carefully selecting a cookie from each tray. One tray would have 2 cookies selected from it, upon which Lily would congratulate that person as the winner. Did he, Lil? I pick her up and place her on my shoulders and skip into the kitchen to check myself. Well, would you look at that? The man didn't leave a crumb behind. After wrapping all of the gifts, Lorraine and I always share a glass of wine and share the plate cookies. Lorraine, cookie in mouth, glass in hand, walks around to inspect my wrapping, criticizing my bungled tape job. Well, we'll just tell the kids that Santa had the elves in the training work on these ones, she teases. Oh, come on. I've gotten so much better. Look at that one in the center. It's pristine, I say. Honey, that one is mine. She kisses me on the cheek and curls up on the corner of the couch with me after snagging the last cookie from the tray. I was gonna have that, I say. Cookies are for those who can wrap. Sorry. You better give me that cookie right now, I say. Lorraine gives me a side eye before taking another bite. I wrap my arm over her shoulder and try to grab it out of her mouth, but she dodges me and scooches her way to the other end of the couch. Don't you take one more bite? She moves it slowly toward her mouth, opening wide. I grab her ankle and pull her toward me. Lorraine erupts with a giggle, still managing to hold the cookie out of my reach. I grab her arm and crawl toward her until I can pin her arm down and lean over to take a bite of the cookie while it's still in her hand. Thank you, babe. I lean down and take another bite. Fine, you can have it. Just let me go. I grab it from her and retreat to my side of the couch, making a show of eating the cookie, smacking my lips and swishing it down with a swig of wine. Lorraine kicks at my legs, smirks, finishes her glass of wine, and leans back into me. The house is silent. The kids long asleep. Wind sweeps gently outside as snow continues to fall, as it has throughout the day. Stockings hang above the lit fireplace, cane-shaped M&Ms, paint sticks, and Hot Wheels cozied up inside, waiting to be spilled across the floor tomorrow before being tossed aside for the next gift. Roscoe huffs in the corner, clearly displeased that we're up past his bedtime. Lorraine and I stay wrapped around each other, enjoying the silence that is so rare during the holiday season, and doze off until we awake sometime in the middle of the night and mosey to bed. The peace and warmth I felt last night feels so much more distant, and I get an urge to hold my wife. Lily is still staring in amazement at the empty plate. Something about it looks off. The red is no longer a merry holiday red, rather a crimson blood that paints Santa's sleigh and dyes his bag of presents. The plate clatters to the floor, Roscoe jumping in fright, bumping into Lily and knocking her to the floor. Lily starts to cry out as Lorraine pops into the kitchen behind me. "Hey, sweetie, did Daddy drop the cookie platter?" she says, sweeping Lily up in her arms. "Are you okay?" she asks me. I realize I've been standing frozen, my mind empty, frigid. I shake it off. "Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Lil. I didn't mean to scare you," I say, planting a kiss on her and then Lorraine. "Why don't we open presents?" I say. That elicits a roar from Nick in the other room, and Lily surges back, wiping her tears away. "Now, before we open presents, you all know the drill." I set up the tripod, and we all huddle in front of the tree, the kids wrangling in Roscoe. "We crushed it again, gang," I cheer, the stored image coming through my live eye, projecting the family photo through my retina. I quickly flick through the Christmas album, looking at the years past. 2 years ago, poor Roscoe was stuck with a cone on his head. 5 years ago was Lily's first Christmas. 7 was Nick's. 11 years ago was our first Christmas married in this house, before we adopted Roscoe later that year. Scrolling through now, the same wish every father has hits me. Please don't grow up. The thought causes a pain to ripple through me, erupting in a powerful headache. "David, are you okay?" my wife asks. I click out of the Live Eye screen, turn and face my family, but they're blurry. Hazy may be a more appropriate word for it, like a memory faded over time. I reset the device and close my eyes. My heart is pumping. My head aches. Something about this moment feels off. A thought beats at the back of my head, but like a weighted box, it refuses to rise to the surface. By the revulsion coursing through my body, I'm not sure I want to know what's inside. The device resets, and I open my eyes. I exhale. The beating in my head subsides. Lorraine wraps her arm around me, no longer in a haze. "Sorry, I just got the worst migraine. Things went blurry for a second," I admit. "There's some aspirin in the kitchen. I'll get you some," she says. "No, it's okay. It's gone. My live-eye may have glitched. I grab her arm and pull her back in toward me. Okay, what are we waiting for? Let's open these presents. The day flashes by in a flurry of ripped-up shreds of candy cane and elf-decorated wrapping paper, cut plastic ties that restrain action figures in their boxes, and chocolate-greased candy wrappers as the kids fuel their excitement with sugar trips. Lorraine works at preparing a late Christmas lunch, Roscoe providing assistance, mopping up the floor. I spend the morning putting together race car tracks, helping Lily begin her Lego dollhouse foundation, and clearing the mess of my critized wrappings that inevitably cover the floor in pieces. Dad, I want to fly the drone, says Nick. The highlight of my morning was watching Nick unwrap the gift he'd been talking about all year, a Falcon 1 safety drone. It was a beginner drone with limited flight range and capabilities, designed to spark kids' interest in flying and racing. Parental controls enabled limitations on range, so we could limit flying to just our backyard and at a relative minimum altitude. I already planned on breaking those rules, but for his mother's sake, they provided assurance that he wouldn't crash into the neighbor's window. Fair. I know, buddy, but it's missing a part. We'll have to go to the store. I help Lorraine set the dining room table, my stomach growling at the aromas drifting in from the kitchen. I can't help but feel like I haven't smelled a home-cooked meal in some time, and I almost get emotional when Lorraine sets the ham down in the center. This isn't my life. This life is filled with love and hope, like the Hallmark holiday movie that plays in the background. Something rattles internally. The box, weighted down, chains jangling, screaming to break free. I swear I hear whispers, someone calling my name, penciling. I can take you tomorrow. I need to pick up your sister's glasses. But we have to go early. David, you're still good to meet with the guy coming to take a look at the leak tomorrow, right? Asks Lorraine. Sorry? I ask, startled back into the moment. The leak. You can stay here while I take the kids tomorrow morning. We need to get it fixed before Aunt Janie comes to visit. Oh, yes, sorry. I'll be here, don't worry, I say. She gives me a look of concern, and I get a feeling again, like this moment is almost right, but not quite. As if someone shoved a couple of pieces of a different puzzle into this one, so that from a distance, it looks correct. But up close, it's clear the image is tainted. I down a couple of glasses of wine as we dig into the feast, which seems to ease the lingering tension inside me. The rest of the day is spent in a shower of giggles and roarous cries, spending the night ramping Hot Wheels with Nick and drawing pictures with Lily. We cap off the night with a board game frenzy. Nick wins twice at Candyland. Lorraine and Lily team up to take Nick and I down at Scrabble Jr., and I win sorry. I feel as if I've won an Olympic medal when my final piece lands home. There's a crack in the board across the word, imitating my own feelings. Looking at it causes the box to rattle more violently, and I'm relieved when Lorraine tells the kids it's bedtime. I stay downstairs while Lorraine gets the kids into bed. Christmas Stories for Kids lays on the coffee table. The night was supposed to end with me reading it to the kids before slowly backing out of the room, exhausted from the day, but overwhelmed with the sense of comfort and security only family can provide. It ended with me crawling into bed with Lorraine, already sound asleep. It ended with a sorry board in pristine condition, a puzzle appropriately assembled. Tonight, however, it ends with me falling asleep on the couch. Roscoe, get off. Get off me. Get off, you crazy pup. Roscoe's covered me in droll again. I must have made my way up to bed in a sleepy stupor last night. Hey, hun, are you awake? I glimpse Lorraine's festive robe. It's Christmas. A crippling pain erupts in the center of my head. Whatever weighted down my box shakes free with the eruption, and it begins to rise to the surface. I'm scared of what's inside. It remains closed, the pain increasing as it continues to rise. Whatever's inside is shaking, begging to escape. It knows that this reality is wrong, tainted. The rogue puzzle pieces pop out, disgusted in their attempt to disguise what is real. The box shakes with such violence, now that I swear it jostles my own body. David, can you hear me? Let's get a... The voice trails off, but the hand attached to it touches my arm, and it's only then I realize it is my body shaking. I'm trapped between two realities, but my mind refuses to accept either. The box is almost to the surface, and it's now I realize it contains death. I plead for it to remain unopened. I feel a pinch in my arm, a physical pain barely perceptible in the mental torture about to be unlocked. Then, a warmth starts to spread, outward from the pinch, up my arm, and through my chest. It makes it to my head just in time to weigh the box back down once more. I'm trapped in limbo. One direction tortures me with what was. Another tortures me with what is. Time passes. Voices fade in and out. Appreciate you accommodating us on short notice and during the holiday. Yes, well, it's been disturbing how many cases are turning up. Anything we can do to help you combat it, we're happy to help. This is him? Yes, David Groggins, age 43. Police found him unconscious in Reynoldsville 3 weeks ago. Medical tested him then. He consumed it? Yes. Tropodiazolethol was found in his system. Heard they're calling it glitch on the streets. Is that right? glitch, bug, defect, crash. It seems to only have found its way into methamphetamines at the moment, and we hope to keep it contained. Easier to track one drug supply over many. I read his file. History of drug abuse ever since his family died in a car crash. Day after Christmas, no less. Well, if your reports are accurate, it certainly helps us understand this drug's intent a bit more. Yes, additional testing is needed, but we're 90% sure he's been reliving the day before the crash. Christmas Day, 4 years ago tomorrow. We are not quite sure how it works. The drug causes a malfunction in the Livi system, essentially trapping a person in a continuous memory loop. We suspect it may attach itself to particularly powerful memories, like in this case, though we cannot confirm at this time. We were able to perform an autopsy on one victim a week ago. Damage to the hippocampus and frontal lobe were observed. Preliminary reports suggest those affected might know they're trapped in a memory, that they may experience what may be described as glitches throughout the memory itself. For this man's sake, I hope he doesn't know. Tomorrow's Christmas. Let him have Christmas with his family again. Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Jessica squints her eyes and bites down on her pinkish lower lip. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Jessica smiles, wrinkles forming around the corners of her mouth. She shakes her head down and chuckles. Darling, what's the matter? What is going on in that big head of yours? She gets up from her leather office chair and walks to her husband to squeeze his large, cold hands. Jessica's husband has never been so melancholy on December 24th. I'm worried, he shares. About what? Tonight. Jessica was alarmed by her husband's words. In the 4 centuries, her husband has been delivering presents and joy to children all around the world. She has never heard him say those words. What is there to worry about? The elves are organized. Everyone has been getting along. The reindeer are so excited for tonight and full of energy. Rudolph's nose is shining brighter than ever. I think we could shut off the headlights on the sleigh to save energy. Jessica, it's not that. Is it him? What? The Grinch? I do not know what he's up to right now. Jessica searches for the answer in her husband's eyes, but all she sees is her reflection. She drops his hands. Now you are starting to worry me. You need to tell me what is going on, Jessica says sternly. I simply do not know. I just feel unusual. Is it me? Jessica asks. Nicholas doesn't answer. Mr. Claus? Mr. Claus? Jeannie the elf asks aggressively. Nicholas perks up from his dazed state and looks around. All the elves have stopped their work activities to observe the overweight man, normally jolly, sulk in his sleigh. The elves exchange hushed whispers, coated in concern. Not only is this moment instilling fear in them, but the Christmas operation is running behind. Why have you stopped? We need to get going. We need to be in New Zealand in 9 minutes, Nicholas yells. The elves shake at the thunderous volume of his voice and immediately finish packing the last few presents into his enormous red bag and feeding the reindeer their carrots. Nicholas has been delivering presents, or coal for the naughty children, for a few hours now. By the time Nicholas and the reindeer got to Amsterdam, Rudolph's nose was getting dimmer, and he was feeling slight fatigue. But they had to keep going. Nicholas was not singing holiday tunes as they flew in the crisp, frigid air in Croatia. He even dropped the wrong present, a gaming console, in the wrong house in Nigeria, and had to fly back to little Kemi's house to switch it with the correct one, a skateboard. The reindeer could sense the disorganization and gloominess from Nicholas. Nicholas knew that tonight was more delicate than usual because he was making mistakes for the first time in centuries. His stomach was full of nerves and milk and cookies. 11:55 p.m. CST, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Nicholas rolls forward and lands on his feet in an upright position, like an Olympic gymnast. His chunky black boots leave faint imprints on the beige carpet. The Christmas lights are still on inside the Alotzi family home, providing light to guide him towards the Christmas tree. He places 3 gifts: a bicycle for Kechi, 8, a basketball hoop for Leon, 10, and a limited edition comic book for Josiah, 12. Nicholas smiles. A sense of peace washes over him, a feeling he has not felt all day. Josiah is the oldest, and he recently started to lose vision in his right eye. It has changed how he plays with his friends and how he learns his favorite subjects in school. But he was an exceptionally good boy this year. He deserves that comic book. That's what it's all about for Nicholas. Bringing joy to children. Nicholas looks around the cozy living room, looking for cookies and milk. With nothing in sight to quench his thirst or hunger, he walks towards the kitchen. This family is well off, he thinks to himself. Big white cabinets, stainless steel appliances, large square footage, pristine, clean, quiet. Milk and cookies wait for him on the large rectangular wooden dining table. Nicholas sips on the milk. He can see the family's new silver barbecue grill sitting outside the back door through the sliding door windows. The right side of the sliding door looked damaged. The white siding is bent and cracked, so much for pristine. As he put the tall glass of milk down, his head became hot. Sweat started to form from underneath his red hat. Something is not right, he thought. The milk was hot, steaming as if someone had just warmed it up just before he got there. Police! Put your hands where we can see them. Before Nicholas could turn around, he was tackled to the ground by an unknown man. Get off of me! He screams in agony. Nicholas, unable to lift his head to see ahead of him, hears more footsteps. An army of footsteps come from several positions in the kitchen. Doors swing open. Wooden chairs are toppled over. Bright flashlights illuminate his face. Nicholas feels his breath weaken and starts heaving. "All right, officer. No need to suffocate him," a voice says. Nicholas feels a weight lift off his back and is finally able to lift his head. Officers dressed in thick, dark-colored bulletproof vests, masks, weapons, and boots surround the kitchen. "St. Nicholas, you are under arrest for trespassing, breaking and entering, animal abuse, and violating the labor code." 2 officers appear beside him to bring him to his feet and start to cuff his hands behind his back. "These are preposterous claims!" Nicholas exclaims. "Sir, anything you say may be used against you in court. You have the right to remain silent." "I am not a criminal. I am Santa Claus." Nicholas wiggles frantically in his cuffs. "If you arrest me, millions of children will not get their Christmas presents. I need to finish my job. Can I speak to your superior? Who is responsible for placing these charges against me?" A sinister silence comes. The officers turn their faces away from the now red-faced Nicholas towards a corner of the kitchen. The pantry, it opens with a creak, and a quiet, cold breeze sweeps through the kitchen. A trapped cry can be heard in the large pantry. Nicholas's eyes cannot believe what he is seeing. A mother, stepfather, and 3 kids, the Alozi family, are bound together, not with the joyful spirit of Christmas, but by dry, brown rope. Their mouths taped shut. Not a word from their lips, but their eyes do the talking. Desperation and fear reeks from the sweat that covers their heads. Nicholas screams and tries to free himself from the restraint of the handcuffs, but the officers hold him back. "I wouldn't try that if I were you," a familiar voice sounds, but Nicholas cannot quite put a finger on it. The unknown figure's boots make loud thuds on the floor as they walk closer to Nicholas. The other officers part themselves like the Red Sea and make way for them. A cap shades her face in the low-lit kitchen, but Nicholas can make out her shiny, blonde hair. "Cindy!" She slowly lifts her head. "Hello, Santa Claus?" "Cindy Lou, what is the meaning of all of this?" Nicholas asks. "Little Cindy Lou, who, from Whoville, sports a black jumpsuit and an unauthorized police badge. Her eyes are black with deceit and evil. A distant image from the small girl who loved Christmas. Cindy, please, remember the day the Grinch stole Christmas? How painful that was for you and your town. Imagine the millions of children experiencing the same thing this Christmas right now. Is that what you want?" Nicholas pleads. Cindy leans closer to Nicholas. "It's not about what I want, Claus. Are these officers even legitimate? Cindy Lou, answer me. And why tie this poor family up on Christmas Eve? The eyes of the smallest Alozi child, Keiichi, beg for freedom. Actually, Cindy Lou checks her watch. It's Christmas Day, and it's about what he gets. Nicholas smells a grisly scent, and immediately his eyes open wide. A masked figure appears from a clump of officers. He gently removes his mask and reveals his skin, all green, and teeth, all yellow with termites. I should have known better, Nicholas whispers to himself. Merry Christmas, Santa Claus. Nicholas is enraged. Veins start to pop from his neck. Why so sad, Santy? What happened to the holly jolly fat man with a white beard that everyone knows and loves? Let me go, now. No, 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 no can do, Santy. Nicholas uses his large body to push the officers, if they even are real Canadian authorities, off him. They fall to the ground, but Nicholas is still surrounded by several angry officers, ready to take him down. Cindy waves her gloved finger, instructing the officers to pounce on Father Christmas. A struggle ensues, and Nicholas is forced to the ground again. He fights with all his will, yelling and kicking with the most power an almost 2,000-year-old man could. Stop resisting, one officer demands. You need to comply, sir, another one says. Punch his fat belly if you need to. Or even better, kick his head, Cindy commands. Nicholas weakly lifts his head, and his fearful eyes drift towards the vile, green-skinned monster beside Cindy. He shows all his 55 crooked, revolting teeth. A bad banana. Suspect has his hand on a weapon, the monster shouts. Nicholas furrows his bushy eyebrows in confusion. He thinks to himself, I do not have my hand on a green Glock 17 appears between Nicholas's eyes, and it fierce with a deafening rumble. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas, the Grinch hollers. A lively souvenir, a lively souvenir. We were on very good terms with our neighbors of about 4 years in our San Diego, California neighborhood. We invite each other over for barbecues, and Joe and I frequently sit in front of a TV somewhere on Sundays to watch a football game or two. Our wives, Annette and Ellie, are in a book club together, work out at LA Fitness, and enjoy poetry reading events. Last summer, we upgraded our backyard and had a pool put in. Nothing massive, just your standard 16 at 32 family pool. It was quite the hangout for both our families. Joe and Elle recently returned from visiting family in Gainesville, Florida. We all convened at their back patio for the celebratory end of their vacation to sip mimosas and Hefeweizens while they gave us all the highlights of their trip. They were excited about the resort they visited and the swampland tours they took there. They were like big kids describing how the airboat driver whipped them through the swamp, even giving them an extra thrill by Tokyo drifting on the sharp turns. Sounds like a lot of fun, Annette replied. Well, that's not the best part. We've found a bit of a souvenir. Really? Oh yeah, Joe said proudly. I'll get it. I'll get it, Ellie said, as she disappeared into the house. I know initially you guys are going to think we're nuts, but I assure you, this is going to be great. Wow, Joe, Donald said. This is quite the build-up. The anticipation is killing us over here. Right then, Ellie emerged with a mid-sized glass tank. Whoa! Donald exclaimed. He can't believe what he's seeing. No way! You guys can't be serious, said Annette. That's crazy, guys. In the glass case, there was a 2.5-foot alligator. Isn't he beautiful? Ellie beamed. He's already grown a couple of inches since we've been back. Whoa, I was actually thinking you brought back a snake or maybe an iguana. But you went all the way back to the evolutionary source. A fucking alligator, Don said. No way this is safe. Elle, no way, Annette cautioned. She was concerned, and her voice shook with emotion as she tried to implore her friend to abandon this idea. This thing is gonna grow and eat you guys. No, this is a terrible idea, sweetie. No, it's okay. We thought this through, John explained, and made an informed decision. This wasn't an impulse buy. I don't know, buddy. It looks like an impulse buy with teeth. Don chided them. They all laughed, except Annette. How did you even come across somebody selling an alligator, Joe? I mean, I know it's Florida, but people aren't just selling these at the 7-Eleven. She asked. Joe explained how part of the Habitat tour involved observing the local wildlife, including gators. They also breed them there. This alligator was part of a litter that was to be raised within the wildlife preserve, but unfortunately, it was a runt. He was too small to compete with his siblings for food, and eventually they would turn on him and consume him as well. The staff were going to have to put him down. This completely exacerbated Ellie, and after some conversation, a disclaimer, and cash, she somehow convinced the preserve owner to allow them to take the little guy with them. And you were okay with this, Joe? Don asked incredulously. Joe shrugged his shoulders. I didn't see any issues with it being so small right now. I guess I kinda kicked the can down the road as far dealing with him getting to be full-sized. As it was explained to us, they are very loyal and highly intelligent. Once domesticated, they are just like dogs or goats. Wait, Annette asked. How did you get it on the plane? Well, the preserve owner wrapped it for travel and fed it, and we just added wet towels over it and placed it in our checked bags. You ran it through baggage claim? Have you seen how they treat those suitcases? Don asked, almost laughing in disbelief. Oh, yes. And I was so worried about the little guy. I could hardly contain my anxiety the whole flight. I hoped he wasn't too scared. I told her, hey, honey, it's a reptile. They're not scared of anything. My wife and I stood there, perplexed. This has got to be the dumbest idea in the history of dumb ideas. Yet here they sat, two highly educated adults carrying on about one of the most dangerous animals on the planet, like it's a long-haired lab puppy. I have to ask some grown-up questions. I steal a glance at my wife with a raised eyebrow, and she shrugs, effectively giving me the go-ahead. Joe? Firstly, how in the world do you domesticate an alligator? Is there like a shock collar? Here, when I zap you, it means don't bite my finger off? I mean, come on. Ha, ha. I hear the sarcasm, Dawn. No. As you feed him, he gets used to your scent and your presence. He begins to associate you with food and satisfaction. It's all positive reinforcement. He bonds with you. Yeah, just like a dog, like we said. He won't bite the hand that feeds him, silly. Ellie chimed in. He eats chicken, mostly. But we can throw in some fish, rodents, steak, and even pork, to give him a variety. They guy gave us a pamphlet for use as a reference, so you read Alligators for Dummies. And you think that prepared you? Annette asked. I can't believe I'm hearing this. Did you say rodents? You feed it rodents? Are you going to buy a shoebox full of mice and dump it in his glass case? Oh, don't be so crude, Dawn. Of course not, Joe said nervously as he rubbed the back of his neck. Well, not exactly a box full. You really are going to go through with this? How long before he grows up to be a fully carnivorous reptile? There's some exotic animal farms around. We can relocate him too, when the time comes. For a fee, they'll come and collect him, humanely, of course, and he'll live out his days at the California Preserve. Dude, is this even legal in California? Can animal control fine you or come confiscate it? Well, it's an ask for forgiveness instead of permission kind of thing. We aren't breeding it or selling it for a profit, so therefore it's characterized as an exotic pet, in my opinion. It's no more illegal that Tyson having a tiger or Michael Jackson having a chimpanzee. But this is an alligator, Joe. Annette pleaded outwardly with her friends. This is a cold-blooded beast. Every incident I have ever seen involves an alligator snapping, its jaws shut on some unsuspecting body part of the owner or trainer. We are trying to get you to see that this will end badly. You and Ellie are putting yourselves in danger. Annette's hands were on her hips, as she's clearly frustrated. We can't seem to talk any sense into our friends. Look, guys, I hear you, but we'll be fine. Come here. Joe stood and put his arms out, and he, Dawn, and Annette had a group hug. "Aw, there. That's so much better," Ellie said. "I know. We appreciate your concern. You're good friends, and you have raised some thoughtful questions, and I would expect no less. But friends, don't worry. This is gonna be a great experience. Alex and us will grow to be..." "Wait," Dawn interrupted. Alex? Alex Alligator? Really, Joe? It absolutely fit like a glove. And when I called him that, his little eyelids flipped. I think he likes it," Ellie added. She reached in and stroked the back of its head. "You want to hold it? Here, it's okay. Let me just get him situated." She set the glass case on the table and reached in and grabbed its tail with her right hand and slid her left hand forward to grasp it under its jaw. But something must have spooked it. It let out a high-pitched snarl and spun its head, and with its tiny but razor-sharp teeth clamped down on Ellie's forefinger and thumb. Blood immediately spurted outward as Ellie screamed and knocked the glass case off the table, which exploded when it hit the patio. Alex didn't fall. However, he hung on to Ellie's flesh, dangling and thrashing with all its body weight. As if trying to rend her flesh from her, blood started squirting out of its jaws as it whipped its body from side to side. Ellie grabbed at it and tried to pull it off, but it was dug in, and she screamed even louder. Joe grabbed its body and pulled, but it was clamped down deep, and pulling it made the flesh of Ellie's thumb started to rip from her hand, making her cry out more. Ellie collapsed onto the patio, screaming incoherently, as the gator's face was now bright red with the free-flowing blood from Ellie's mangled hand. Annette grabbed a big hunk of glass and began hitting it on its head. 1 blow, 2 blows, 3 blows. Finally, the gator released its grip, rolled over onto the patio, and scurried away. "Oh, Ellie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," Joe said as he pulled off his shirt and attempted to stem the flow of blood from Ellie's marred flesh. Her thumb was only hanging on by 2 tendons, and half the flesh from her index finger was tattered and torn. He wrapped it up with his shirt. "Dawn, put pressure here, please," Joe said, almost in tears. Annette had both hands covering her mouth and was wide-eyed with disbelief as Ellie moaned and cradled her hand. She was growing visibly pale and going into shock, no doubt. Joe called 911 while Annette comforted Ellie. Dawn quietly wondered if they'd be able to save her thumb or not. How could this thing have turned so deadly so fast? Shit, he thought. Speaking of deadly, where is that little fucker? Joe, did you see where it went? No, I didn't. The little bastard's probably terrified, hiding in some cubby hole somewhere. The dispatcher is sending animal control, but maybe we can bag it before it gets away. Damn, I fucked up, Dawn. I'm such a fuck up, he said in a frustrated tone. What was I thinking? Hey, let's focus. No time for that now, buddy. I'll run to my house and get a spotlight real quick. So Dawn went out their back fence and crossed over onto his property. He unlatched the back fence and headed for his tool shed on the other side of the pool, when lo and behold, there was Alex. He was casually floating in their pool. There was a red stain afloat around him, apparently Ellie's blood. But Alex was totally oblivious to the carnage he caused. He's merely enjoying the cool water. Dawn doesn't know why, but he thought about the story of the scorpion and the frog. What did they expect? He's an alligator. As Dawn approached the pool, Alex seemed to sense his presence and slowly paddled towards the edge of the pool, towards Dawn. "Wait, what's this?" "What are you doing, little guy?" It turned, its body exposing its tail, and made a cooing sound. "Please don't let this be the second dumbest thing that happens today." Dawn squatted down and gently reached under the gator and scooped it up, holding it under its head and tail. He made sure to keep a firm grip on Alex and not expose any appendages that may trigger it. "You need to be with your own kind, runt or not." He actually kinda liked the little guy. "But yeah, it's time to go. You've caused enough trouble today." He heard the sirens approaching and headed back to Joe's house. I remember her, the first time I laid eyes on her. She knocked at the wooden door. I knew it wasn't an adult knocking. I just know these things. The sound was light, timid, and just a bit too low on the door to belong to someone grown. I walked across my living room, the floorboards creaking under my weight, and unlocked the door. As I pulled it open, the hinges groaned softly, and there she was, standing on my porch, waiting for me. She came to me, and I knew it was her. I knew right away she was the one I'd been waiting for. I felt it. It's hard to put into words, but if I had to, it was like being struck by lightning in the pit of my stomach. A surge of electric energy coursing through me and ending in a sharp, tingling burst at the base of my skull. She was tiny, small even for her age, and her presence seemed to shrink further under the weight of the gray autumn sky. Her long blonde hair framed her round cheeks, dampened slightly by the drizzle that had been falling all afternoon. Her light blue eyes, startling in their clarity, reflected the dull brown of my front door, as if they were trying to absorb everything around her. She smiled then, just a flicker of a smile, timid, shy. It might have been imperceptible to someone else, but I saw it. I knew it was there. "Hi," she said, her voice barely louder than the wind rustling through the bare trees. I crouched to her level, studying her face as if I might find answers etched in the softness of her features. "Hello," I replied, the word catching in my throat. Her small hands clutched a green box close to her chest, a makeshift tray hanging from her neck with an assortment of colorful packages. "I'm from Troop 195 of the Girl Scouts," she said, her voice steadier now, though still carrying a gentle, unpracticed rhythm. "I'm selling cookies to finance our trip to Washington next year. Would you like to help?" I blinked, her words pulling me from the strange fog that had overtaken me since I first saw her. "I'd love to help," I said, forcing a smile. "What exactly are you selling?" She brightened, her confidence growing with every word. "I have caramel chocolate chip, Do-si-dos, lemon-ups, and thin mints." I nodded slowly, leaning one arm on the door frame. "Those all sound delicious." And they did, each one of them. I wasn't lying. I'm not a liar. I've always tried to tell the truth, to open up to anyone who showed even the slightest interest in me. It's rare enough that someone does. Which ones would you suggest? I asked, genuinely curious. The do-si-dos are the most popular, she replied, a practiced response, one she'd probably used at every house she'd visited. I tilted my head. Are those your favorite? Her expression softened, her small fingers playing with the corner of a box in her tray. No, I like the Girl Scouts s'mores. But she hesitated, her eyes meeting mine. We're all out of those. She seemed genuinely saddened by that, and I could see it in her eyes. That's something I've always been able to do. Read people, see the emotions they hide behind words and smiles. It's a sensitivity I've had since I was a boy, and it hasn't faded with time. How about this? I said, my voice lowering, like I was sharing a secret. Give me 2 boxes of do-si-dos now, and when you get more Girl Scout s'mores, I want you to come back here and bring me 10 boxes of those. Her face lit up, her smile blooming into something real and full. It wasn't timid anymore. It was happy, proud. She looked like she'd just conquered a mountain, a small victory in a world that often feels insurmountable at her age. Really? She asked, her voice rising with excitement. Really? I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out the cash. I handed it to her. She reached for it, her movements unhurried. And as she did, I let 3 of my fingers graze the back of her small hand. It was a fleeting touch, imperceptible to her, or at least I thought it was. But I noticed how her skin quivered ever so slightly under my fingertips, like the faintest ripple in still water. She quickly pulled the money back, her attention shifting as she counted it with practiced efficiency. Then, tucking the bills into the small pouch at her side, she handed me the 2 boxes with both hands. She held them out as though they were treasures, precious and fragile, the way a child often treats even the simplest things. Thank you so much, she said, her voice louder now, the earlier shyness melting away. I'm happy to help, I replied, meaning it. She turned to leave, clutching her tray of cookies like a prize. At the edge of the porch, she paused and looked back at me, her eyes wide and sparkling with gratitude. I promise I'll come back when we get more s'mores. I'll be waiting, I said, watching as she skipped down the driveway, her small frame disappearing into the gray drizzle. I stood there for a moment, holding the boxes of cookies in my hands, feeling a strange warmth that wasn't entirely explainable. It wasn't about the cookies or the sale. It was about the way her smile had lit up the gray, how her small victory had momentarily lifted inside me. I closed the door and set the boxes on the counter. For a long time, I just stared at them, my mind replaying the exchange. Something about it had settled deeply in me, a seed waiting to grow, but her room wasn't ready. I needed to get it ready for her, to make it perfect, comfortable, a place where she could grow strong and healthy and happy. She deserved that, so I worked at it tirelessly, transforming the cold, gray basement into a beautiful sanctuary. The walls, once lifeless and bare, were painted a soft, light pink, the kind of color that whispered warmth and innocence. A bed with a quilted blanket sat in the corner, flanked by a small table with a lamp shaped like a butterfly. I built a shelf, filling it with hundreds of children's books, toys, and dolls. Every detail mattered. A camera sat discreetly in the top corner of the room, its lens fixed on the space where she would sleep and play. It wasn't about control. It was about safety. I added a lock to the heavy wooden door, one that could only be opened from the outside. It wasn't to trap her, no. It was to keep the world out, to ensure nothing could hurt her. The best part, though, was the shopping. I spent hours picking out clothes for her, envisioning her wearing them, imagining how she'd look. I chose soft fabrics in bright, cheerful colors, clothes she could wear now, and some she'd grow into over time. Each piece felt like a step closer to her, to making her mine. And then I waited. I waited for her to come back. Days turned into weeks, and still I waited. The 2 bites of cookies sat on the counter, untouched. I couldn't bring myself to open them. Instead, I would trace my fingers along their edges, touching the cardboard like I had touched her hand. Sometimes, I'd lift one to my face, inhaling the faint mix of packaging and something else, something peculiar and fleeting. The smell of her, the anticipation was unbearable. A constant hum under my skin. Each creak of the floorboards, each knock at the door, sent my heart racing, hoping it would be her. But she didn't come back, not yet. I knew she would, though. She had to. I'd made everything perfect. And then, one day, her knock came. It wasn't just any knock. It was her knock. I knew it instantly, even before my body moved to rise from the couch. I felt it in my chest, in my veins. A spark of anticipation coursing through me. The moment I'd been waiting for, the moment I'd been preparing for, was here. The chance to see her again, to look into her bright eyes, to show her what I had built for her, because of her. Because she was the one. It was her. I crossed the room in a few quick strides, unlocked the door, and pulled it open. There she stood, with that smile. It wasn't as shy as before, more certain now, like she knew she was welcome, like she belonged here. In her hands, she held a neat stack of cookie boxes, her reason for coming back. Or so she thought. I smiled at her, a warmth creeping into my voice that I couldn't mask. "It's good to see you again," I said. She beamed, her cheeks flushed from the cool air. "I have your cookies, and since it's such a big order, I added a pack of lemon ups for free." "Well, now that's very kind of you," I replied, my tone light and friendly. I slipped my hands into my pockets, pretending to search for the cash. My fingers met empty fabric, as I knew they would. I hadn't carried any money in weeks. The truth was, I didn't want to hand her the money here on the porch. Not this time. I needed her to come inside. I looked up at her, feigning a small chuckle. "Looks like I forgot my wallet. It's inside, in the kitchen," I said, gesturing behind me. It wasn't a lie. I don't lie. I never lie. My wallet was in the kitchen, sitting right on the counter, next to the untouched cookie boxes from her first visit. The ones I had been saving for this moment. Her smile didn't falter. She nodded, clutching the boxes tighter. "Oh, that's okay," she said, ever the accommodating Girl Scout. "Why don't you come in?" I asked, stepping aside and motioning to the warmth of the house behind me. "It's cold out there, and you've been walking all afternoon, haven't you?" She hesitated for a moment, her gaze flicking to the open door, the inviting glow of the living room beyond. Then she smiled again, this time with a hint of excitement, like this was just another part of her adventure. "Okay," she said, stepping inside. I closed the door behind her, the sound of the latch clicking into place, sending a thrill through me. It wasn't loud, but to me, it echoed. I turned to her, my smile steady, my heart pounding. "Make yourself at home," I said, my voice calm and even. "Let me grab that money for you." She nodded, her eyes wandering around the room, her curiosity as innocent as ever. She was perfect. Perfect. And she was finally here. Oh, do I remember her? The way her muffled cries felt against my left hand as I pressed it over her mouth, lifting her from the ground with my right arm. She bit down hard and kicked wildly, her small shoes landing against my legs, but I barely felt it. I told myself it was normal. She didn't understand. Not yet. She couldn't comprehend what I had done for her, what I had built, the sacrifices I had made. Not yet. Her body thrashed against mine as I carried her, her weight so light it felt like she might vanish. But she wouldn't. Not now. Not ever. I took her down the stairs, each step an echo in the stillness of the house, and through the door. Not a room, not just any room. Her room. This was the place I had prepared for her. The place where she would grow, where she would finally be safe, where I could ensure nothing and no one could hurt her. I would see to that. Only me. I would witness every moment, every milestone. She would know, in time, how much I cared, how much I loved her. I threw her onto the bed, her small frame bouncing once before she scrambled back, pressing herself against the pink walls I had painted just for her. She screamed, her voice raw and high, tears streaming down her red face. "Please, let me go. Please," she begged, her words garbled through sobs, her tiny hands clawing at the quilted blanket I had chosen with such care. But I knew it would pass. It always passed. The crying, the yelling, the fear, it would all melt away after a few weeks. It always did. She just needed time to see, time to realize that this wasn't what she thought it was. This was better. "It's okay," I said, my voice steady, calm, trying to cut through her cries. "You'll understand soon. I promise." Her tears only fell faster, and her words dissolved into incoherent sobbing. I watched her for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, but not from regret or hesitation. It was from the sheer anticipation of what was to come. This was just the beginning, and like I said, I don't lie. I never lie. But they didn't understand that. They didn't understand anything. They took her away from me just 3 days after she got here. 3 days. That's all the time we had. They stormed in like animals, breaking through the front and back doors, screaming, their boots pounding on the floors. I had walked in peace for years. And the guns. Oh, the guns. Pointed at me. At me. Me, who had kept her safe. Me, who had given her a sanctuary. A place where she could be loved, cared for, where she could grow without fear. They didn't see the love in my eyes, the care in my hands, the way I had worked so hard to make her life perfect. They only saw their own distorted version of the story, their judgment cutting through my truth. They didn't understand. Oh, I remember her. I've remembered her every single day for the past 24 years, 364 days, and 6 hours. I know because I've counted. I've counted every second, every breath, every heartbeat that has passed since the moment they tore her from me. But now, just a few more days, just a little more time, and we will be reunited. Finally, I've waited for this. I've prepared for it because, like I said, I don't lie. I never lie. A day to remember. Francina Tutiliogi sat up in bed, holding on to dear life the photo of the man who melted her heart, Troy Edwards. It was the night before the big day, the biggest day in her life, where she was going to walk down that aisle and say, "I do," officially becoming Mrs. Troy Edwards. It was the moment her family had been awaiting, including all her cousins, distant and close, from all over the town. As she glanced at the photo of the striking young man, his golden hair that was slicked back, and ocean blue eyes that possessed serenity in them, with whom she'd spend the rest of her life, she sighed dreamily as she began to reminisce about the first time they laid eyes on each other. 1 year ago, during the summer, Troy was a student at the University of Cambridge studying English when he was offered a study abroad program that gave him the opportunity to travel to Italy. The summer program lasted for 7 weeks, and it was during one of those 7 weeks when he made a chance encounter with Francina. She was making her way back home from grocery shopping, and he was trying to find the best restaurant in town. She bumped into him, both hands carrying bags filled with vegetables and other ingredients for dinner, with a carrot falling to the ground. He picked it up for her, and when she looked up, she was enthralled by what she saw. With a sheepish grin, he spoke to her in flawless Italian, asking her for directions to the nearest restaurant for dinner. She laughed, replying to him in Italian that she could speak English as well, and she invited him to dine with her and her family, so that he was not alone. Leave it to Francina to show generosity to a complete stranger, especially to an Englishman as good-looking as Troy was, with his sexy accent. She liked that he made an effort to communicate with her in Italian. Not many foreigners, yet alone Americans, would have gone out of their way to do that. Troy followed Francina to her home, where she introduced him to her family. He shook hands with Francina's father, Marco, and her mother, Martina. He also got to know her cousins, Elisa, Paolo, and Natalia, as well as her maternal grandparents, Rosa Maria and Giuseppe. Francina did not have any siblings, so her cousins were like the siblings she'd never had. Troy was an only child as well, so this was the first thing that bonded them as something they had in common. Despite Marco's protectiveness of his only daughter interacting with a man who was not Italian, he still got along with Troy, as did the rest of the family. Troy was a pleasant guest, and he was able to tell the family about who he was. They were impressed by his academic background and his flawless Italian, which eased the initial tensions between them when they encouraged him to speak English to them. Francina was impressed by Troy's ability to charm her family, and for the first time in her life, she fell in love without even realizing it. He charmed his way into her heart, and she wanted to make sure he never forgot. So, when dinner was over and he was getting ready to leave, Francina walked Troy out and thanked him for his company. "I hope to see you again sometime soon," she said, I'll see what I can do." He gave her that unforgettable smile before he left, and Francina sighed as she thought about the handsome man who came into her home that night and stole her heart away. As a 17-year-old girl, she'd never felt this way about anyone until she laid eyes on Troy. Now, it's been a whole year since that memorable night when she met him, and Francina was eager to marry Troy. She was 18, and he was 23, so she was not too young to get married. This was a time when it was the norm for women to wed at a young age, and Francina's family strongly believed that she was old enough to fall in love and marry. In their eyes, she was no longer a little girl. Marco realized this when Troy came over last week and asked for his permission to marry his beautiful, precious daughter. He trusted and loved Troy enough to consider him to be the son that he'd never had. And he eventually offered the young man his blessing to wed Francina. The next day, Martina and Rosa Maria accompanied Troy to the jewelry store to find the most beautiful ring for Francina, which took them an hour until he found the perfect one. When Troy realized how expensive it cost, he was unsure if it was worth it to spend abundant pocket money on a ring that Francina might not appreciate later in life. He was not employed at the moment, so this would pose a potential financial threat. Rosa Maria, giving him a sympathetic smile, suggested, "I suppose it would be better if you could just give her mine instead." She took off her ring and gave it to him. "Her grandfather gave this to me, which I also gave to her mother here. And now I'm giving it to you to give to her. This ring is a symbol of love in our family, and I have no doubt that you'll make her happy." Troy examined the ring before he could accept it. "Are you sure, Signora?" he asked. Rosa Maria nodded in response as a tear fell down her eye. Martina held her mother's hand. She could tell this was an emotional decision for her mother to make, for the sake of her lovely daughter. Martina said, "Real love does not cost anything. The gift you give must come straight from the heart. Francina shall treasure this all the days of her life. This we are certain of." Rosa Maria had brought her ring's jewelry box with her to secure the ring for the time being. The three of them thanked the store owner for her time before they departed, and Troy's decision was set. He was going to propose to Francina that evening during dinner. That evening, Francina was wearing a lovely aqua blue dress, looking as stunning as ever. She was elated to see Troy join her for dinner, for two at her house, and here he was, dressed in a suit and tie. She didn't know it, but he had the ring in his pocket for safekeeping. He would take it out during dessert time, but for now, it was time to enjoy the main course, while a musician that her mother hired played gentle, romantic music on the piano. When it was time for dessert, the maid came to collect their dinner plates so that the cook could serve the tiramisu and panna cotta, Francina's favorite dessert since childhood was panna cotta, so it was a miracle that the cook could read her mind by providing her favorite dessert. The main course wasn't all that bad either, but the dessert was the best part. Troy held Francina's hand and gazed lovingly into her chocolate-brown eyes. "Have I ever told you how beautiful you looked tonight?" he asked in a smooth voice that caused her heart to beat. "You tell me that all the time," she replied with a giggle. "Well, that is the truth, and I'll never let you forget it. I love you, Francina. I can't explain it, but you mean the world to me. I've never met a woman as beautiful as you. I never felt this way about anyone else before, if you can believe it." Francina smiled. She believed it. He was her first and only. "I love you too, Troy. I love to spend time with you. And I love how happy you make my family. Their happiness is important to me too. Thank you for opening my eyes and my heart to see what true love is. I do what I do best." He grinned as he made his bold move by getting down on one knee and taking out the ring. "And this is the best thing I'll ever do. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Francina. I know your family must think that you're much too young, but for me this feels right. I don't wish to wait a minute longer. Life is short and precious. Precious, just like you." A tear of joy ran down Francina's face. For a second, she thought she was dreaming, but she was not. This was reality. Troy Edwards was really proposing to her. "Troy," she began. "Shh. Don't say anything yet. I love you with all my heart, Francina. Your family has been generous and kind to me, especially your father. He gave me his blessing to ask for your hand in marriage. He loves you and is rather protective of you, which is a great thing because it means that you come from a loving family who want nothing but the best for you. They can agree that I'm the best for you, right? So, what do you say, Francina Tutiliogi? Will you make me the happiest man in the world and be my wife?" Another tear ran down Francina's face as she glanced down at the ring. She recognized it as her grandmother's ring, and it was a family treasure. Rosa Maria had handed it down to Martina, and Martina decided to give it to Troy to give to Francina. Touched by the beauty of the ring, Francina had no choice but to say yes to forever. "Yes, yes, 1,000,000 times yes," she squealed with joy as he put the ring on her finger. Troy announced. She said yes, everybody. Her family arrived in the kitchen to congratulate the young couple. They had organized this dinner so that Francina and Troy could share a private moment with each other as he proposed to her. She just made him the happiest man alive by saying yes. For the rest of the week, after that memorable evening, Francina and her family began preparing for the wedding. Troy's family and friends flew in from England so that they could be there for him. Now, the two families were eager to celebrate their children's eternal bliss. The night before the big day, Francina sat up in bed as she glanced at Troy's photo on her nightstand, reminiscing about the first time she met him, and her fears were eased. Everything was going to be perfect. She woke up in a blissful mood the next morning. A bright and beautiful Saturday. That morning, her family was cheerful as they worked with the photographers and makeup artists to capture as many photos of the bride-to-be as possible. Marco and Giuseppe decided to head to the church to inform the priest that they were getting Francina ready for the occasion. And they stayed in the church with the priest and incoming guests for the ceremony. The women remained in the house with Francina, along with her cousins, for moral support as she wore her elegant, long-sleeved, V-neck lace gown. It was an original, nothing like what her mother, grandmother, or aunts had worn before. Rosa Maria couldn't contain her emotions as she wept at the sight of her stunning granddaughter. She told Francina, "Sei una sposa bellissima. You make a beautiful bride." Francina, flattered by the compliment, gave her grandmother a hug. "Nonna, non piangere. Se piangi, mi farai piangere anche tu." Grandma, don't cry. If you cry, you'll make me cry too. Rosa Maria told Francina that she'd see her downstairs after her cousin, Elisa, helped her with her necklace. After Rosa Maria left, Elisa went to her room to find a more stylish necklace for Francina. In the moment that her cousin and grandmother left, and Francina was alone in her room, Francina went up to the window to open it so that she could get some fresh air in her room. It was supposed to be a very warm afternoon, but then she felt someone shove her in the back, causing her to stumble backward onto the window, shattering it. And she screamed as she fell many feet from the window to the ground. Elisa returned to her room, dumbstruck when she saw the shattered glass, and peered out at her injured cousin on the ground and cried out in terror. Francina, Rosa Maria, and the others came running to the room. "Cosa è successo?" Rosa Maria asked Elisa, seeking to know what happened. Elisa replied, sobbing, "È Francina, è caduta dalla finestra." It's Francina. She fell out the window. Everyone gasped in shock and horror as they came up to the room, glanced at the remains of the broken glass window on the floor. Martina called 911 to report that her daughter had fallen out of the window. She offered to stay behind with Francina until help arrived, while Rosa Maria and the other women volunteered to go to the church to break the shocking news to Marco, Giuseppe, and even Troy. The wedding would have to be postponed for now. Everything happened within minutes. Paramedics came to transport Francina to the hospital, and the family was left reeling from the shocking news. Even Troy was devastated that such an unfortunate thing could happen to the woman that he loved, who he was supposed to share the rest of his life with. Now it wasn't to be. Instead, she was fighting for her life, not knowing whether she would make it or not. The doctors told the family that Francina had suffered significant head injuries and broken bones, so they were going to perform emergency surgery on her to save her life. In the meantime, investigators were around to examine the fall, to determine how she could have fallen out the window. A week later, Francina was in the process of recovering from the surgery, and her family became devoted to caring for her, including Troy. Although they did not get married as planned, he was still determined to take care of her, as if she was his wife. That's how much he loved her, and how much he was willing to stick by her through the thick and thin, in sickness and in health, for better or worse. The vows he was following before he actually had a chance to say, "I do," to her. A week later, Francina was still in the process of recovery. That night, as she was about to wash her face in the bathroom before heading to bed, she couldn't help but overhear the conversation taking place downstairs in the living room. She heard Elisa sobbing uncontrollably, and the others comforting her. "Va bene, Elisa," Martina reassured her, telling her that everything was going to be okay. "No, non lo è," Elisa replied in between her sobs. "È tutta colpa mia. Ho spinto Francina apposta. Vedi, volevo ferirla, perché sono così gelosa di lei. Ottiene sempre tutto ciò che vuole. E ora sta per sposarsi con un uomo che ama. Non è giusto, perché che mi dici di me? Non posso farci niente se provo così tanto risentimento nei suoi confronti. Per l'amor del cielo, ha solo 18 anni. Elisa had just practically confessed to having pushed Francina out of the window deliberately while her cousin was alone in the room. She was supposed to help Francina put on her necklace, but instead, she ended up pushing her out the window instead. She wanted to hurt Francina, having always been jealous of her for whatever reason, believing that Francina always got everything she wanted, especially now that she was bound to marry the man that she loved, Troy Edwards. Elisa said she couldn't help the resentment that she'd apparently always felt toward Francina, and now she's trying to justify it by saying that Francina's the one getting married at only 18. Elisa was 23, the same age as Troy, and she herself was single and unattached. Men tended to gravitate more toward Francina than to her, or at least that's how she felt. That was a criminal confession in a nutshell. Francina wanted to go down and confront Elisa, but her weakened condition made her too tired to engage in any yelling. She'd yell at her tomorrow. Instead, she gave Troy a phone call to explain everything to him, and she asked him to report this to the authorities the next morning, which he agreed to do. This was her plan of revenge against Elisa, turning her in. When Francina woke up the next morning, Martina offered to help her downstairs to the kitchen for a nice breakfast. She asked her daughter, "Come ti senti stamattina?" wanting to know how Francina was feeling. "Sto bene, grazie, mamma," Francina replied, saying that she was feeling fine. Rosa Maria gave Francina her dish of eggs and toast, as well as a cup of orange juice, smiling adoringly at her brave granddaughter, who was handling all this with grace. "Grazie mille, nonna. Di niente, amor mio." Rosa Maria gave her a kiss on the forehead to say, "You're welcome, my love." At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and the officers called out for Elisa. Elisa introduced herself to them as they informed her that she was officially charged with assault toward Francina by shoving her out the window. Elisa sobbed, apologizing profusely to Francina and the others, although there was very little her apologies could do now. With delightful smiles, the whole family watched her being escorted by law enforcement. And for the first time in her life, Francina felt victorious toward her bitter, vengeful cousin, who was now going to face the consequences of her terrible actions. Like a breath of cold air, by December, Montreal was buried under a heavy coat of snow that had been piling up since late October. Gray slush lined the streets, the result of salt and traffic grinding the once pristine snow into a dirty, icy mess. The biting cold cut through even the thickest coats, and the endless scraping of shovels and snowplows provided a constant backdrop to city life. Holiday decorations were everywhere, but their cheer felt commercial, more of a reminder to spend money than a celebration. The air smelled faintly of exhaust and wet wool, the kind of scent that lingered in crowded metro stations and poorly insulated homes. Yet, as Veronique walked through the city streets, her boots crunching against the fresh snow, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She'd always loved the holidays. As a child, she'd marveled at the shimmering decorations, the sound of boots crunching against ice, and the occasional scent of poutine wafting from nearby diners. But this year, the joy seemed oddly hollow, as if it were a beautiful facade masking something dark and unspoken. She paused at the corner by Sherbrooke, her breath curling in front of her in frosty puffs. It wasn't just the odd unease she'd felt all week. There were other signs, too. Small things that would have gone unnoticed if she weren't already on edge. Like the fact that the street lights on Peel Street flickered every time she passed, even though they stayed steady for everyone else. Or the elderly woman at the grocery store who stared at her just a little too long, her milky eyes narrowing in suspicion before she hurried away. Then there was the panhandler. Brian had been a fixture outside McGill University's McLennan Library for as long as Veronique could remember. Now in her 3rd year, she'd often passed him on her way to classes. Wrapped in layers of tattered coats and scarves, he was well known among the students, who occasionally dropped coins into his cup. Brian had a reputation for getting himself thrown in jail during the harshest nights of winter. A desperate but effective way to stay warm. Last year, however, everything had changed. Brian had started muttering about the Winter Watcher, claiming to have seen him lurking in the city. His stories grew more frantic, and the locals dismissed him as crazy. Then, one night, Brian's body had been found in an alley, his lifeless form curled against the icy ground. Officially, it was chalked up to exposure, but his wild claims lingered in Veronique's mind. Lately, she'd been seeing Brian again, or at least she thought she had. Every time Veronique walked by the library, he'd be sitting there, looking directly at her, his eyes impossibly sharp and knowing. But no one else seemed to notice him. When she asked Tara, her friend had just laughed nervously. "Brian's been gone for a year, Veronique. Maybe you're just remembering him." And when she glanced back, it was as if he'd vanished into thin air. "Get a grip," Veronique muttered to herself, pulling her scarf tighter around her neck. She glanced around the bustling street. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. People bustled into malls or hurried underground into the metro system to escape the biting wind. And yet, she still felt the weight of something looming just beyond reach. She turned toward Upstairs Jazz Bar and Grill on Bishop Street, a cozy spot where she could grab a reasonably priced lunch and momentarily escape the cold. As she walked, she couldn't shake the nagging sensation that Brian's ghostly presence had followed her. Even now, she felt as if a pair of eyes were drilling into her back, though every glance over her shoulder revealed nothing but bustling pedestrians. The regular waiter, Roman, who hailed from Poland, greeted her with a familiar nod. People like Roman weren't called baristas in the 1990s, but he knew her usual order by heart. "The usual, Veronique?" Roman asked, already reaching for a menu, but knowing she probably wouldn't need it. Veronique nodded, offering a half smile. She found a seat near the small stage, cradling her coffee as jazz music played softly in the background, its warmth seeping into her hands. She stared out at the bustling street, searching for what? She didn't know, but the feeling of being watched pressed against her back, making her fidget in her chair. "You okay?" Roman's voice startled her. He had appeared beside her, his concern etched across his features. "Yeah, I'm fine," Veronique said quickly. "Just tired, I guess." Roman hesitated, then nodded. "Well, let me know if you need anything." When he walked away, Veronique caught sight of something in the reflection of the window. The panhandler from outside the library, standing still as stone on the opposite side of the street. She whipped her head around, but the spot was empty. The crowd moved on, oblivious. Veronique's pulse quickened. She could have sworn she'd seen him. Not just anyone, either. It was unmistakably the same man. His ragged layers and piercing gaze haunted her thoughts. She shook her head, taking a long sip of her mocha. Maybe she was imagining things. That night, the whispers returned. Veronique lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding in the dark. The murmurs were faint, but unmistakable, as if coming from the walls themselves. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The whispers stopped abruptly, leaving the room in suffocating silence. Veronique reached for her phone, its glow a small comfort in the oppressive dark. She typed a quick text to her best friend, Tara. "I think I'm losing it." Weird noises in the house again. A reply came almost instantly. "Want me to come over?" Veronique hesitated. She didn't want to drag Tara into this. Whatever this was. "No, I'll be fine. Just needed to tell someone." She set the phone down and closed her eyes, willing sleep to come. When it finally did, her dreams were restless. A blur of faceless figures, snow turning crimson, and the sound of bells tolling deep and low. The next morning, Veronique decided she needed answers. If she didn't do something, the unease would consume her. She started with the McGill Library, its towering stone facade dusted with fresh snow. The interior smelled of aged paper and varnished wood. The librarian, Mrs. Haversham, greeted her with a kind smile. "Researching something special?" Veronique hesitated, unsure how to phrase her question without sounding unhinged. "Actually, have you ever heard of anything strange happening around here? Like weird stories or legends?" Mrs. Haversham's smile faltered. "Strange how? I don't know. Just things that don't feel right. Or people seeing things that aren't there." The librarian's gaze sharpened. She glanced around to make sure they were alone before leaning in. "You're not the first to ask questions like that. This city has its quirks, let's say, especially around this time of year." "What do you mean?" Veronique pressed, her pulse quickening. Mrs. Haversham hesitated. "There's an old story about someone called the Watcher. It's just a folk tale, of course, but some say he appears in times of great personal unrest. They say he watches, waiting for something. But here's the strange part. Only the one he's watching can see him." Veronique swallowed hard. "Have you seen him?" The librarian's face darkened. "No, and I hope I never do." That evening, Veronique found herself standing in her living room, staring at the Christmas tree she'd painstakingly decorated the week before. The ornaments gleamed under the soft glow of the fairy lights, but the sight brought her no comfort. Mrs. Haversham's words echoed in her mind. The Watcher. She'd looked up the story online when she got home. Most of the information was vague, but the consistent thread was that he appeared during moments of deep vulnerability, as if drawn to people who felt unseen themselves. The knock at the door made her jump. She turned, her heart racing. It was probably Tara, she told herself, though a chill crept over her as she remembered the last time she'd seen Brian. Was he outside again? Could ghosts knock? But when she opened the door, no one was there. Just the cold wind and the faint sound of carolers in the distance. She stepped outside, peering into the night. Snow fell softly, blanketing the world in an eerie stillness. Then she saw him, Brian, standing at the end of her driveway. There was no mistaking it. His tattered layers and unblinking stare were as vivid as they had been when he was alive. She wanted to call out, to demand answers, but her voice caught in her throat. The figure didn't move, only watching her with an intensity that froze her in place. Veronique's breath caught in her throat. She stumbled back inside, slamming the door and locking it. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone to call Tara. But before she could dial, the whispers started again, louder this time, surrounding her. She clamped her hands over her ears, but it was no use. The lights flickered. Then, with a final, shuddering gasp, they went out. In the darkness, Veronique felt the weight of his presence. She didn't need to see him to know he was there, just beyond the door, watching, waiting, and for the first time, she understood what he wanted. Her. The next morning, Veronique's house stood as it always had, its cheerful decorations a stark contrast to the unease that lingered in the air. Neighbors passed by, unaware of what had transpired within those walls. But Veronique was gone, leaving behind only faint footprints in the snow leading toward the city streets. And in Montreal's busy streets, the holiday festivities carried on. But every so often, someone would pause, glancing over their shoulder, a fleeting sense of being watched brushing against their mind before disappearing like a breath of cold air, a deer, a sign, and a true prologue. The buck emerged from the line of pine trees, sniffed the warm fall air for any danger. He then strode across the mist-covered, grassy field, eyeing the weeds growing along the fence line. As he chomped on the weeds and grasses that grew along the wire fence next to the road, it failed to notice the timber rattlesnake that had been resting in the weeds as well. When the buck's hoof stepped on the rattler, the snake struck out and bit the leg. Once and again, the buck reared back and kicked at the snake. The buck then began to walk away, but only made it a few steps before the poison took effect. Its legs became stiffer, then stopped moving altogether. As the buck heart stopped, the buck tripped into the fence, knocking over one of the fence posts and a good portion of the fence as well. Attached to the fence post had been a no trespassing sign. The road Beatty Av, next to the field, was rarely used, so the buck simply decomposed into the ground. Life carries on. 2 years would pass, and the buck had all but disappeared when David drove his delivery van down Beatty Ave. His mind was not on work, but on the loss of his wife and mother of their 3 boys, just a few months prior. Now working 2 jobs to keep the boys in the same house until the insurance company paid him what he was due. David looked at the row of Christmas trees in the field across the road. Like a tsunami, dread flooded his brain. This would be the first Christmas without Kathy. David had been dreading this time. Everyone told him the boys were young and would be fine. He would have to make a list of things to buy the boys over the next couple of months, decorate the house. Would he have to make cookies, as Kathy did with the boys? Or maybe he could ask his mother or mother-in-law to help. They were both always offering help in any way. His mind filled with thoughts of Christmas. He missed the turn off Beatty Ave to where the packages he needed to deliver. Cursing himself, he had to drive an additional 2 miles to find a driveway to turn around in and get back en route. Stay awake and pay attention, old boy. The last thing you need is to get into an accident, he said aloud to himself. David made his delivery and took his time walking back to his truck, taking deep breaths of the cool country air to clear his head. Putting his seatbelt on, he made the decision to call the grandmothers, and hard as it may be, ask for their help. He felt good after coming to this decision. With their help, it would be a good Christmas for the boys and himself. Driving back down Beatty Ave, he let his eyes wander over the row of pine trees again. This time, no tsunami of dread, but one of happiness. He slowed his truck to a stop when he saw a cardinal bouncing from limb to limb on one tree. David's mind seemed to relax for the first time since Kathy's death. After completing his deliveries, David returned home and immediately called his mother, and then Kathy's mother. Both were thrilled to help. Over the next 2 months, the mothers talked to each other and made a schedule of when cookies would be baked and the tree put up. The boys were very excited to be spending time with the grandparents. Both grandfathers, after finding out what was going on, joined in. It was building up to be a good Christmas. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, David loaded the boys in a truck he had borrowed from his brother and headed out. After 20 minutes of dancing around questions from the boy about where they were going, Why did they need Uncle Jack's truck? David pulled over to the side of road, next to the field of Christmas trees. "What are we doing here?" asked the oldest, Tommy. "Well, I think we need a tree, don't we?" David asked with a big smile on his face. All three boys looked out the window at the field of trees and began to cheer. Chad, the youngest, began making chopping motions with his hands. "Can I cut first?" he asked with a huge smile pinned to his face. "Here's the plan," David told his boys. "I was thinking we'd dig up the tree and bring it back home. Then, after Christmas, we can plant it in the backyard. What do you think?" "Mommy always loved Christmas trees," Chad said, still holding the smile on his face. But tears were gathering in his eyes. David could feel the mood in the truck change with Chad's statement. He inadvertently popped the happy ballon. He had to say something to bring joy and happiness back. "Yes," she did. "That is why I thought we could bring one home and keep it all year in the backyard," he said quickly, hoping this would help. Bill, the middle child, broke the silence when he pointed to the largest tree and announced they should bring that one home. The other two boys cheered in agreement. "I love your idea." All David could get out before the boys were out of the truck and running across the field towards the large tree. David chuckled to himself and went to the back to pull out the shovels and wheelbarrow. Then followed the boys through the field. The boys were basically dancing around the tree they had chosen, even though it was at least 12 feet tall and wider than Uncle Jack's pickup. "Boys, boys." David had to call several times to get their attention. "That tree is way too tall to even fit into the truck, let alone in the house. We can just trim some off the bottom to make it fit," Tommy said, looking up and down the tree. "Even if we could make it fit, there is no way the four of us can carry it to the truck." "Buddy, I was thinking of this one." David pointed to the tree he had seen the cardinal in a few months ago. "It's kind of small," Chad announced, looking from the large tree to the smaller one his dad was standing next to. "Yeah, Dad, Chad is nearly as tall as that one," Tommy added. "We can put it on a table in the living room," Dived improvised. "Plus, digging this one out is going to hard enough." Tommy shook his head, then clapped his brothers on the shoulders. David geared himself up for a fight with Tommy. Since Kathy's death, Tommy seems to have decided he was suddenly a man and didn't need to be told anything by his father. "Come on, guys. Dad's right, that one will be easier to dig up and carry to the truck," Tommy said, shocking his father. The boys and their day spent the next hour digging and pulling on the tree to free it from its grasp on terra firma. Moving to the new tree to and into the truck took an additional 15 minutes. On their way home, they stopped by a gardening center to get new soil and a large yellow planter. Yellow was their mom's favorite color. While shopping, Chad explained to the salesperson the pot was to put their mother in for Christmas, and then put her in the backyard. David had to quickly explain exactly what they were doing. The salesperson smiled and laughed and stated she understood. When they arrived home, David and the boys moved the tree to the edge of the truck edge. They removed burlap they had wrapped around the roots. David instructed them to pull off the earth from the roots before they put it into the new pot. He then went inside to clean up and start making dinner. David had just started browning the meat when Tommy ran inside. "Dad! Dad, Dad!" he called, running into the kitchen. David pulled the pan off the burner and looked at his son. "Look what we found on the tree." Tommy had 3 small whitish objects in his hand. "What are those?" David asked, whipping his hand on his shirt, then picking up one of the objects. "Looks like a stone, but didn't feel as heavy as it should have. I think they're finger bones," Tommy said, with a serious, straight face. "You see, the bigger one goes right here on your fingers." Tommy placed the longer of the bones on his finger between the first and second knuckle. "Well, Dr. Leet, you may be right," David said, with a little more concern in his voice than he meant to. "How many did you find?" "Just these 3, Tommy replied. "Tommy, we found some more funny stones," screamed Bill from the garage. David grabbed the remaining bones from Tommy's hand and put them on the kitchen counter, then pushed Tommy towards the garage. Once back in the garage, standing at the back of the truck, Chad was holding a hand full of bones that looked just like the ones Tommy had brought him. "Okay, boys," David said, looking outside the garage to see if anyone had heard Bill screaming his announcement. Not seeing anyone, he ushered the boys inside. "Let's get washed up for dinner now." "But Dad, we're not done yet," Chad mentioned as he pulled another clod of dirt off the root ball. David paused. "It will be easier once the dirt is all dried out." During dinner, David was quiet as the boys chatted endlessly while eating tacos. Halfway through dinner, David excused himself and took his cell phone into the living room. When he came back into the kitchen, he addressed the boys. "Guys?" David started, then took a deep breath before continuing. "Don't be." David's mind went blank. He wasn't sure how to continue. "What the matter, Dad?" Tommy asked through a mouthful of tacos. "No easy way to say this." David bravely started, then immediately faltered, looking in the faces of his sons. "Okay, here it is. The special rocks you found today, cleaning out the roots of the tree. I think they are bones from fingers." Tommy, who had made the discovery, was not surprised. Bill looked at his fingers, as if the bones might be his own. Chad took advantage of everyone else being occupied and grabbed the last taco. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser, followed by an unmarked police car, pulled into the driveway. Over the next hour, the 2 police officers examined the root ball, while a crime scene detective collected the found bones and searched the roots for more. The detective had taken David into the living room to speak to him. Tommy, Bill, and Chad stood in the driveway and watched the police working. David came out a short time later and without speaking to the boys, walked over to the neighbor's house and returned with the neighbor, Mrs. Atwell. "Boys, I need to go with the detective, and I'll be back. Until Mrs. Atwell is going to watch over you. I want you on your best behavior until I get back." Bill was the only one who responded. "Okay, you be good too," which brought a smile to David's face. The police finished collecting the bones and searching for the tree ball. They took the 2 shovels used by the family to dig up the tree, and then they left. It was after dark before David returned and collected his children and took them home. Over a pizza dinner, he told them he had taken the detective to the field where they dug up the tree. He explained that they had sort of illegally took the tree, but the detective said not to worry about it, and we could keep the tree. The 2 younger boys cheered. 3 days later, the detective called David back and explained they had found a complete skeleton in the hole they had removed the tree from. A forensic anthropology team responded and determined the body had been buried between 50 and 60 years ago. David expressed his thanks to the detective and said he would think about how to break it to his sons. David heard the detective take a deep breath, then explained he will have to do it sooner than later. While on site, the detectives found 7 more bodies buried under tress in the field. The field used to belong to a notorious mafia associate. The detective believed the bodies in the field were victims of mob hits. The news has already caught wind of the story, so they may be showing up for interview with the man who broke so many open homicide cases. Now it was David's turn to take a deep breath. He thought of Kathy and smiled to himself. She always had a way of making him forget bad things. Dial tone. Dear Jess, Tijuana, Mexico. Pay phone. Outside Mercado El Popo, 1999. Sound of coins clinking, dialing tones. Aló? ¿Quién habla? Myra. Es Leah? Leah. Dios mío. I can't believe it's you. We've been going crazy here. Your mother comes to my house every day asking if I've heard from you. Where are you? Are you okay? I made it to Tijuana. I'm at a payphone near the market. The phone keeps eating my coins, so I don't have much time. You sound different. Your voice. You sound sick. Are you sick? I'm not sick, Myra. Just tired. So tired. Remember how we used to stay up all night studying for Senora Martinez's chemistry exams? This is different. I haven't really slept in days. Days? Leah, you're scaring me. Everything is scary here. Remember how we used to talk about leaving Venezuela? Making plans in your backyard? Drinking your mother's terrible café con leche? Sound of traffic passing, horns honking. Of course I remember. We were going to be roommates in Miami, get jobs at fancy hotels, maybe even meet Ricky Martin. We had everything figured out. We were so naive, Mayre. So stupid. We thought it would be like the movies. Save some money, buy a plane ticket, start a new life. But the visas, they kept rejecting us. And now you're with the coyotes. Leah, everyone here knows someone who didn't make it. Please come home. Home to what? The markets are empty, Mayra. The hospitals have no medicine. Remember when my little brother got dengue last year? Mama had to trade her wedding ring for antibiotics. I can't watch my family live like that anymore. Warning beep from the phone. Hold on. Need to add more coins. Sound of coins dropping. Myra, I have to tell someone. I can't keep carrying this alone. Tell me what? What happened? The group I'm with. There was this girl. My age, maybe younger. From Guatemala. The coyotes, they made her carry drugs. Inside her body. Little packets, like grapes. She cried all night before they made her swallow them. Dios mío, that's not even the worst part. There was this woman with us, from El Salvador, in her 50s with grandchildren in Los Angeles. She showed us their pictures the first night. She couldn't keep up in the desert. Her legs just gave out. Leah, we left her there, Mayra, under a cactus. She begged us not to go. She promised she'd rest just for an hour, then catch up. I told them I would stay with her. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone. But she grabbed my arm, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "No, mi hija, one death is enough." She made me promise to go. She made me do it. Sound of crying, voice breaking. I had to go, Mayra. I had no option. I had no option. I had to run to catch up with the group. I could hear her praying behind me, her voice getting fainter and fainter. We tried crossing that same night, but there was a massive drug bust happening near the crossing point. Cartel activity. Border patrol everywhere. Helicopters with searchlights. The coyotes said it was too hot, too risky. We had to turn back. Now we're stuck here in Tijuana, waiting to try again. And all I can think about is how we left her there, alone, with just those pictures of her grandchildren, sounds of street vendors calling out in Spanish. I can barely carry my own jacket now. It weighs more than all our school books combined. Remember how we used to complain about those heavy books? Bitter laugh. What I wouldn't give to be back in that classroom now. You can come back. Please, it's not too late. It is. There's no going back. The desert, it changes you, changes everything. I see things at night when we're trying to sleep. Shadows moving. Sometimes I think it's the border patrol. Sometimes something worse. The coyotes watch us constantly. One girl tried to run away last week. They caught her. She came back with bruises. She wouldn't explain. Background chatter. in Spanish, English, and indigenous languages. Last night, we tried crossing through the river. Everyone said it would be safer than the desert. But there were farmers on the cliffs above the river. Farmers with rifles, Myra. They didn't shout warnings, didn't tell us to go back. They just started shooting. The water, voice breaking. The water turned red. People were screaming, trying to swim back. But the current was so strong. We had to stay underwater, holding our breath, praying they wouldn't see us. A mother lost grip of her baby's hand. I can still hear her screaming, "Por Dios, Leah." Some people just disappeared under the water, never came back up. The farmers just stood there, watching, like they were hunting animals, not watching people die. Human beings, parents, children, dreams. Warning beep from the phone. I keep thinking about what Papa used to say before he died, about America being the land of opportunity. But he never knew about this part. The nightmare you have to survive to reach those opportunities. If they catch me, I've heard stories about the detention centers, but I can't go back, Mayra. There's nothing left in Venezuela. There's your family. There's me. We love you. Love doesn't fill empty stomachs. Can't buy medicine. Can't build a future. The inflation. It's worse now than when I left. My mother's entire month's salary can barely buy a week's groceries. I have to make it, Mayra. I have to. Sound of more coins being inserted. You know what I think about most? Those stupid telenovelas we used to watch after school. Remember how we'd laugh at how dramatic they were? Now I understand. Real life, real desperation. It's more dramatic than any telenovela. Leah, please. You're trembling. I can hear it in your voice. I'm scared all the time. But I'm also angry. Angry that this is what it takes. That we have to risk our lives just for a chance at a decent life. That farmers with rifles get to decide who lives and who dies. Distant police sirens. The coyotes are signaling. We're moving again tonight. Mayra, if something happens to me. No, don't you dare say goodbye. Listen to me. If something happens, tell my mother I understand now. Why she cried when she found out I was leaving. Tell her I'm sorry for the pain I'm causing her, but not for trying. Tell her what she always told us. La esperanza es lo último que se pierde. Hope is the last thing we lose. Leah, please, and Mayra. That night before I left, when we stayed up planning our future, those dreams we shared, keep them. Maybe not Miami, maybe not the fancy hotel jobs, but something better than this. Promise me you'll keep hoping. I promise. But you have to promise to stay alive. I'll try. I have to go. They're waiting. Don't forget me, okay? Never. Leah, wait. Te quiero, Mere. Maybe next time. Maybe I'll call you from the other side. Sound of coins running out, followed by the click of the phone being hung up. Then a dial tone.